Chapter 1874. The souls of mortals' blood oozed out of the armor's helmet. The ancestor of the Mo family's eyes no longer shone. A few cracks were even clearly visible on his eyeballs as they constantly bled. The ancestor of the Mo family fell out of the sky powerlessly, striking the ground heavily. With a resounding thud, he created a huge crater on the ground, kicking dust into the air. Jian Chen stowed the startling rainbow sword away while his turbulent presence was gradually dismissed as well. He arrived before the crater created by the ancestor of the Mo family. The dust immediately cleared as soon as he stood there while the ancestor's body slowly floated out of the pit under an invisible force. Blood constantly flowed from within the armor. Jian Chen removed the armor from the corpse of the ancestor. Only then did Jian Chen see his head. His entire head had already been reduced to pieces. Red and white matter mixed together. It was indescribably disgusting. Apart from his head, even the top half of his body had been reduced to a bloody mess. He did not possess a body as powerful as Jian Chen's, so even his body had almost been shaken apart. Fortunately, the space ring on the Mo family ancestor's finger was not destroyed. Only a series of densely packed web-like cracks had appeared on it. Currently, the space ring was close to destruction. This space ring might break at any time, so I have to remove everything from inside as soon as possible. Without any hesitation, Jian Chen immediately moved all the items in there into his own space ring. However, to his surprise and joy, he discovered quite a lot of high-grade divine crystals in the ancestor's space ring. There were close to 10 blocks. Moreover, there were a few loose mid-grade divine crystals. Mid-grade divine crystals were not particularly effective for overgods during cultivation, so there were only a few thousand of them in the ancestor's space ring. Each one was only the size of a finger. Jian Chen also discovered a few cultivation methods and battle skills within the space ring. However, they were all demonic and extremely evil, far more than the Empyrean demon arts that Houston practiced. Jian Chen directly frowned when he saw them. In the end, Jian Chen destroyed them all. They were simply too disgusting. Jian Chen only looked over the materials and heavenly resources roughly as they were not of particularly high quality. After that, he put them all away in his space ring. Although these items are basically useless to me, I can keep them for the Tian Yuan clan. Whether it's heavenly resources or materials, the elders in the clan can never have enough, thought Jian Chen. Suddenly, Jian Chen produced an interjection of surprise. He discovered a black box in the space ring. It laid in an inconspicuous corner, protected by a layer of formations. Jian Chen took out the black box. After examining it closely in his hands, he removed the formation. Suddenly, a cold presence radiated from the black box. At that moment, Jian Chen seemed to hear the wails and screams of countless ghosts. It was an extremely chilling sound. Jian Chen furrowed his eyebrows, and he became rather stern. He slowly opened the box. Immediately, a black mist surged out from there, engulfing Jian Chen. Jian Chen's eyes shone brightly. The thick, black mist was unable to obscure his vision. Through the mist, he could clearly see that a palm-sized banner laid within the black box. When Jian Chen saw the banner, various mixed sounds rang out in his head. He heard the screams of ghosts, the pleadings of a woman, and wails filled with endless pain. He even began to see things in his head. The images were brutal. They were either pitiful, or they were evil, hair-raising spirits. There were many of them, forming a great black mass that blocked out the sun. It seemed like a living hell. Collect the souls of mortals and assist me in creating a demon artifact. I will gift you a fortune in exchange such that you will accomplish great things. It was also at this moment that an obscure sound rang out in Jian Chen's head. It seemed to be filled with a mysterious charm, making it seem bewitching. Even Jian Chen's eyes became confused as if he had become lost. In Jian Chen's sea of consciousness, the obscure voice seemed to become the voice of the world. It seemingly represented the will of the universe, making it irresistible. It boomed through Jian Chen's sea of consciousness and affected his mind. It seemed like the voice was forcibly planting its own will within Jian Chen, so that it could affect his thoughts. However, Jian Chen's soul was nothing short of extraordinary. It was formed from a fusion between fighters and radiant saint masters, so it had undergone a transformation, making it mutate. It greatly differed from the souls of other people and could use martial soul force. According to Fairy Hao Yu, even with the entire saint's world in perspective, martial soul force was basically mythical. The people who could use it truly could be counted with 2 hands. The daze in Jian Chen's eyes only lasted for a few seconds before it cleared up. However, the demonic voice that had directly tried to plant itself in Jian Chen sensed nothing. It continued to speak like a robot, and it also informed Jian Chen of the method of collecting souls. After hearing that, killing intent immediately boiled in Jian Chen's heart. He said coldly, "What a vicious method. They actually use women born in a moment of Een on a day of Een in a month of Een, and on another day of Een in a month of Een, they'll impregnate her using a man that's also born in a moment of Een on a day of Een in a month of Een. Before the child is born, they'll choose a moment of Een on a day of Een to kill both the mother and the child brutally, and then they'll use a vicious method to extract their souls. All of this just to forge a demon artifact." Jian Chen looked at the black banner once again. He sensed the souls that had formed the thick black cloud as he felt sorrow from the bottom of his heart. The number of souls in there had reached several 100,000. Every single soul had been pregnant when they were still alive. They were mortal women who had not cultivated, killed before their children were born. What a vicious demon. Just to forge a demon artifact, it wants to kill so many innocent people. Since the ancestor of the Mo family had this banner, quite a few of the souls must have come from him. "Ancestor of the Mo family, you deserve to die," Jian Chen said coldly. Mortals and cultivators were different. Once cultivators began cultivating, they would have to drench their hands in blood in pursuit of greater strength. Whether it was the Tianyuan continent or the Saints' world, every single expert had basically navigated through mountains of corpses to get to where they were. The truth behind their success was endless murders. This was why when cultivators died, they did not deserve sympathy. However, mortals were different. They lived short lives and were supposed to enjoy their short lives. The Mo family, Jian Chen gritted his teeth. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. He shut the box and resealed it with its formations before hurrying to the Blue River province with the corpse of the Mo family ancestor. Chapter 1875. Destruction of the Mo family. Many people were still discussing how the Mo family faced the attacks of a powerful enemy in the provincial city of the Blue River province. Many people were filled with excitement when they saw the ancestor of the Mo family flee. They all hoped that the Mo family would be destroyed as a result. Clearly, the Mo family had a horrible name in the Blue River province. They did not have the favor of the people. Many people already resented the Mo family, except they were unable to do anything due to the Mo family's strength. These people would naturally become especially excited when they saw such a powerful overgod begin fighting with the ancestor of the Mo family. All of them were eager. They eagerly hoped for the ancestor to be directly slain. Once the Mo family lost their overgod, they would not be able to exist for too long in the Blue River province. At this moment, there was a flash of light. The streak of light flew into the provincial city with lightning speed without raising the attention of many gods. In the end, it stopped above the Mo family. Jian Chen had returned to the provincial city with the body of the Mo family ancestor. He stared at the panic-stricken people of the Mo family coldly, and did not show any pity in his eyes at all. He directly tossed down the corpse. It's the ancestor. Impossible, this is impossible. How did the ancestor? When the people of the Mo family saw the corpse with an incomplete head, all of their eyes widened. They were stunned, and disbelief filled their faces. However, soon afterwards, there were a series of sorrowful wails. Many people cried out in sadness. The ancestor had always been the Mo family's province. His existence had allowed the Mo family to gain such a great status where no one dared to touch them. Now that the ancestor of the Mo family was dead, all the people in the Mo family realized that their clan had collapsed. The glory of the Mo family would become a matter of the past. At the same time, there were a few gods in the Blue River province who saw the corpse of the ancestor. They livened up and could not help but laugh out wildly. They were moved. Since the Mo family had lost their overgod, some of the powerful clans within the provincial city would work together to destroy them. Has your Mo family been capturing women frequently? Jian Chen stared at the people coldly as he hovered in the sky. Many of their expressions changed when they heard Jian Chen's question. They sensed an ill omen. Was one of the women they captured related to this person? The people from the Mo family looked at one another. Everyone thought of the same thing, and no one dared to speak out. Senior, the Mo family has indeed been capturing mortal women frequently. They have taken away over 100 women, at least from what I've witnessed. Most of them are mortals, a god said from outside the Mo family. Jian Chen's eyes immediately became frosty when he heard that quite a few of the captured women did not even cultivate. Killing intent rose up from his body. He glared at the people from the Mo family and said coldly, "Where are the mortal women that you've taken away?" They've already been sent to the ancestor. Only a small fraction of them fail to interest the ancestor, so they're kept in the clan. However, they've all suffered horrible fates. They're all dead. Senior. This one is Sun Shanggong. I'm not a part of the Mo family, only someone who has been recruited by them. I am not related to the Mo family. Please spare me, senior, a god from the Mo family said. His voice trembled in fright as he carefully begged for his life. Sun Shanggong, you coward. I've misjudged you, Sun Shanggong. You may not be a part of the Mo family, but don't forget you've personally caught quite a few women to please the ancestor. Sun Shanggong, you've also sullied quite a few women. There were quite a few gods from the Mo family who pointed out the dirty deeds that Sun Shanggong had committed. Suddenly, a tremendous presence radiated from Jian Chen. It flooded the surroundings, making all the bodies of the gods from the Mo family sink as if they now shouldered a mountain. They immediately fell quiet. Let me ask you, do you know where the ancestor of the Mo family keeps these women? Jian Chen glared at Sun Shanggong. There was one time when I sent a few mortal women to him. Back then, I discovered that the ancestor stores all of them in a spatial saint artifact. I'm guessing the women are still in the spatial saint artifact that the ancestor carries on him. Sun Shanggong said everything he knew. In order to live, he told Jian Chen everything. Jian Chen's senses of the soul immediately extended into the space ring. He checked through all the saint artifacts that the ancestor owned, and indeed, he found a spatial saint artifact that contained quite a number of people. There were over 1,000 of them. They were all mortals, with 80% of them being women. The remaining 20% were all young men. Many of the women were already pregnant. Just as expected, the ancestor of the Mo family was collecting the souls of mortals. I just wonder whether all of the souls in the banner came from the ancestor. Jian Chen felt sorrow when he saw the women in the saint artifact. The women were like the animals reared by mortals, to be slaughtered once they were ready. Senior, I've already told you what you want to know. Please spare my life. Sun Shanggong pleaded again from below. Jian Chen's senses of the soul receded from the spatial saint artifact. Killing intent poured out of him, and he said coldly, "How can I spare you after you've committed such heinous crimes?" With that, Jian Chen extended a finger. He shot out a sword chi that punched through Sun Shanggong's head, wiping out his soul. Quite a few gods from the Mo family had already taken out teleportation formation discs in an attempt to flee. Some of the deities did not possess a teleportation formation disc, so they flew off as quickly as they could. They fled in all directions. However, before an overgod, and a peak overgod in particular, even the gods did not have enough time to activate the teleportation formations. Jian Chen destroyed all the discs. As for the deities of the Mo family, they had all been stopped by gods either from other places or other powerful clans in the Blue River province. The Mo family did not have the citizens' favor in the Blue River province. Moreover, they had captured so many women across the years. They acted without precaution, so they naturally offended many people. Now that the ancestor of the Mo family was dead, the majority of the Mo family's power was gone. The people who resented the Mo family naturally stood forward without any hesitation at all, stopping all the people who tried to flee. For a moment, booms rang out across the provincial city. There was fighting everywhere. Many gods from powerful clans pursued the people from the Mo family. Ha ha ha, Mo family, to think you would have a day like this. Many people laughed aloud within the provincial city. A few people who managed to complete their revenge cried with hot tears. Don't you dare escape either, Jian Chen said to the gods of the Mo family coldly. He heavily injured all of them and sealed off their cultivation before throwing them all into the spatial saint artifact carried by the ancestor of the Mo family. The spatial saint artifact was of quite a high quality. It was far greater than the radiant saint artifact, as it could even withstand attacks from gods. Chapter 1876. Treasury. After Jian Chen put all the gods of the Mo family into the spatial saint artifact, it basically announced the imminent destruction of the Mo family that had been dominant for so many years. Now, the Mo family only possessed a few origin realm cultivators and servants as well as a few deities who did not flee. They were the ones who believed that death was liberation, and they wanted to die with their clan. Jian Chen ignored these people. He hovered in the sky as he expanded the senses of his soul. He searched every inch of the Mo family. His senses had even extended deep underground as he searched for anyone he missed. Indeed, he found 2 gods deep underground after he began his close search. They were currently hiding in a secret room. Boom! Jian Chen struck out once again. The startling rainbow sword shone brightly, illuminating the surroundings. It directly blasted the ground open. He used this extremely brutal method to dig deep and remove the earth. He used his brute strength as a late-over god to excavate a tunnel into the ground. The 2 gods hidden within the ground seemed to sense that something was off. Without any hesitation, they immediately took out their teleportation formation discs. They wanted to flee at the moment. However, a sword stabbed through the ceiling as a streak of light. It appeared with unbelievable speed, directly cutting off their arms as well as any hopes of escape. Afterwards, the ceiling of the secret room collapsed. A large quantity of soil fell down. A tunnel 1,000 meters in length plunged straight into the ground while the sunlight from the outside world gave the secret room some light. No god of the Mo family can escape. Jian Chen appeared in the secret room. He heavily injured the 2 of them and sealed up their cultivation before throwing them both into the spatial saint artifact. Jian Chen was about to leave the secret room after capturing the 2 people. However, his eyes narrowed at this moment. He gazed into the depths of the secret room. The underground room was extremely large. There were a few jade pedestals that were the size of cushions. From the traces left on them, he could tell that they were used for cultivation. However, behind the jade pedestals, he found a large door. A powerful formation at the level of overgods protected it. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered. He slowly made his way before the door. After hesitating momentarily, he smashed through the formation. Immediately, the underground room rumbled. The entire provincial city above shook violently as if a great earthquake had just happened. Thick cracks appeared on the ground, startling all the people in the city. Before long, Jian Chen smashed through the formation and directly entered through the door. At that moment, extremely turbulent origin energy surged out. The first thing that Jian Chen saw were 2 mountainous stacks of divine crystals. They shone with a blinding light, making them very eye-catching. One of the piles were low-grade divine crystals, while the other pile was mid-grade divine crystals. It was extremely plentiful. Besides the 2 stacks, the surroundings had various treasures. Not only were there cultivation methods and truth-tier battle skills, but there were also even quite a few heavenly resources and pills. This should be the treasury of the Mo family, Jian Chen murmured to himself. Many organizations possessed treasuries. After all, it was impossible for a single person to possess all the wealth of a whole clan. This was because the treasury was crucial to supporting the everyday activities of a clan. It would be accessed frequently. The ancestor of a clan would basically spend his or her entire time in secluded cultivation. Centuries could pass in the blink of an eye. They would be in no mood to manage these miscellaneous affairs. As a result, basically everything that was required to maintain the clan would be stored within the treasury. Powerful formations and the power of the entire clan would protect it. There are probably over 100 million low-grade divine crystals and a few million mid-grade divine crystals. Jian Chen walked around the 2 stacks before stowing them all away in his space ring. Although there were many divine crystals in here, they were all low-grade or mid-grade. If they were converted to high-grade divine crystals, there would only be 4 or 5 blocks. When Jian Chen emerged from the treasury, it had been completely emptied out. He took everything in there, regardless of whether they would be useful or not. Jian Chen returned to the surface again. He discovered that people had surrounded the entire Mo family. There were over 20 gods of various ages standing quietly to one side with their presences hidden. All of them stared at the tunnel that plunged straight into the ground. Greetings, Senior. We are. Seeing Jian Chen emerge, the gods all bowed towards him. They stated their own clans in an extremely polite manner. Most of these people were the ancestors of powerful clans in the Blue River province. Seeing that the Mo family had lost most of their power, all these clans mobilized their people. They hunted down the remaining forces of the Mo family, and did not let anyone go. There were also a few gods from foreign places among them. They did not have any grievances with the Mo family. Instead, they disliked how the Mo family had been doing things, so they also took part in the hunt. I'll leave the people of the Mo family for you to deal with, but don't kill the innocent, Jian Chen said to the gods. As the senior wishes. The gods all responded very politely. Jian Chen left the Blue River province. He returned to the Tian Yuan clan in the divine kingdom of Ping Tian through the formations he had cast down. Then, he immediately summoned all the members of the upper echelon of the clan. I've already prepared a path of retreat, so if the Empyrean demon cult comes and we can't repel them, immediately retreat through the teleportation formation. However, for the sake of safety, when you get transported away, I will leave people I trust to guard the teleportation formation. Unless we need to retreat, no one is to approach the teleportation formation, Jian Chen said sternly from his patriarch's seat. Of course, he was just speaking to the gods that had come from the saints' world. Many people secretly let out a breath of relief in the discussion hall when they heard that they now had a path of retreat. After dispersing everyone, Jian Chen summoned the people from the lower world. He took out everything he had obtained from the Mo family and allowed them to take whatever they needed. Naturally, the people from the world of Forsaken Saints did not miss out either. They also got to choose treasures for themselves. Jian Chen, where did you get so many things? Did you discover another dwelling? Shangguan Mu'er blinked her eyes. All the items left her speechless. Only Origin Realm cultivators and deities can use most of these items. There isn't a lot that gods can use. As for the cultivation methods, they're all rather demonic, so I think Jian Chen has probably emptied out the treasury of a clan that practices demonic arts. Houston smiled as he sat on the floor. Currently, he was wearing his blood-red robes. His red hair rested on his shoulders casually as he stared at the floor covered in things. Uncle Xiu is right. I have indeed emptied out an Overgod clan's treasury. Jian Chen smiled before taking out the items he had obtained from the ancestor of the Mo family. He said, "These items come from the Overgod himself. Have a look if there's anything you need. Once you've chosen what you want, split the rest with the other people. I don't need anything else. Just give me some more mid-grade divine crystals. I just happen to be in need of them for a breakthrough," said Shangguan Mu'er. Her enchanting eyes shone brightly while her voice sounded divine. You should use high-grade divine crystals instead. The origin energy in high-grade divine crystals is purer. It'll be several times more effective compared to mid-grade divine crystals. I just happen to have quite a lot of it on me. Jian Chen stared at Shangguan Mu'er as a sliver of rare gentleness appeared in his eyes. Afterwards, he gave all his high-grade divine crystals to Shangguan Mu'er. These high-grade divine crystals originated from the three Overgod from the Empyrean demon cult and the ancestor of the Mo family. Even though Shen Jian had taken away half of the high-grade divine crystals from the three Overgods, there were still more than a dozen blocks if the Mo family ancestors' wealth was included. When I broke through to Overgod before, I traveled quite a distance with 3 blocks of high-grade divine crystal to break them up into mid-grade divine crystals. Look at you now. You're directly giving your wife high-grade divine crystals for cultivation. A heavy voice rang out. Shan Jian walked over in simple clothes. He seemed to be smiling. Jian Chen, I think you once said that using high-grade divine crystals to cultivate as a god is just too wasteful. I think you've said something like that before. Shen Jian sat down beside Jian Chen and made fun of him. Chapter 1877. Within the space, it's different. That's because we happened to lack divine crystals back then, so we needed to use each divine crystal to its greatest capacity. Naturally, we needed to break them down and use them sparingly. But it's different now. We don't lack divine crystals, so there's naturally no need to save them like before, Jian Chen smiled. He glanced at Shangguan Mu'er and continued. Most importantly, my wife is going to use the high-grade divine crystals. Even if it's wasteful, I don't feel it at all. Shen Jian stared at Jian Chen in surprise. He acted like he had just met Jian Chen and said, Jian Chen, I could never tell over so many years that you're actually someone who takes his women as the priority over friends. You sure have hidden that well. Everyone burst out laughing when they heard that. Shangguan Mu'er showed a rare sliver of embarrassment, but there was also a hint of warmth in her eyes. I wonder how Xiao Bao is right now and if he's doing well on the Tian Yuan continent. However, with his strength, there's probably no one in the lower world who can abuse him. Shangguan Mu'er could not help but think of the Shangguan Aojian, who was still on the Tian Yuan continent. An obvious sliver of reminiscence appeared in her eyes. Jian Chen could tell the thoughts currently on Shangguan Mu'er's mind. Jian Chen arrived beside her and held her white, slender hand. He said softly, Mu'er, I can now cast down teleportation formations that can cross divine kingdoms. I believe that before long, I'll be able to cast teleportation formations that can cross worlds. It'll only be a matter of time before we can go back. Shangguan Mu'er also held Jian Chen's hand gently and nodded slightly. She anticipated the day when she could return home. Not only was her son, Shangguan Aojian, on the Tian Yuan continent, but her father, Hao Wu, was also there. I hope my father can last until the day I return. However, now that origin energy is gradually returning to the Tian Yuan continent and the world is now connected to the world of Forsaken Saints, reaching the origin realm shouldn't be a problem with my father's talent, Shangguan Mu'er thought to herself. Her prejudice towards her father had already vanished gradually. Jian Chen only took a few items that were useful to him from the ancestor of the Mo family's space ring among everything he had obtained from the Mo family. He either split the rest or stored it away in the treasury of the Tian Yuan clan. After splitting everything, Jian Chen gathered with the people from the lower world again before entering his own personal secret room. The secret room had been dug deep underground. Fist-sized luminous pearls covered the surrounding walls and ceiling, and they gave off a warm light at all times. Jian Chen sat in the secret room. He took out the spatial saint artifact he obtained from the ancestor of the Mo family. In the next moment, Jian Chen vanished from the secret room. Only a fist-sized spatial saint artifact that was like a divine hall hovered outside. Jian Chen appeared in the artifact space silently. Before him sat over 20 gods from the Mo family. They all used their full strength in an attempt to break through the seals Jian Chen had cast down. They were all bloodied and pale-faced while their faces were haggard. They were all extremely weak. A few empty jade bottles used to store pills were cast beside them messily. Stop wasting your energy. I carry the spatial artifact with me, so even if you break through the seals, it won't change anything. That's because I'll sense it when you break through the seals on you, Jian Chen said plainly as he stood with his arms crossed. Clearly, the gods did not sense Jian Chen's arrival. Their bodies all jolted when Jian Chen spoke out, and their eyes snapped open. However, all of them looked at Jian Chen furiously and with deep resentment. Patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, even if you've fallen out with the ancestor, you've already killed him. We elders of the Mo family have never provoked you or offended any person from the Tian Yuan clan. Why must you kill us all? A god from the Mo family said with a shrill voice. He stared at Jian Chen closely. He had never felt so much hatred for one person. Many of you probably can already guess the reason, but you just refuse to believe it. That's right, I am killing you all to avenge those mortal women. Removing your Mo family can save the lives of many mortal women, Jian Chen said coldly. His gaze was cold, without any sympathy or pity for the gods of the Mo family at all. Ha ha ha, mortals are only ants. You're actually going to kill so many gods because of a few ants? Patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, I don't know whether to describe your actions as heroic or ignorant. If I were you instead, I'd try to subdue all the elders so that they follow you and strengthen your clan. An old man laughed as he stared at Jian Chen in great interest. Jian Chen's expression remained the same. He shook his head gently and said, I don't need people who massacre the innocent. As he said that, a golden thread appeared in his hand silently. With a thought, the golden thread tied up all the gods and dragged them towards another place. On the other side of the interior of the spatial saint artifact, there was a small village. All the mortal women the Mo family captured lived there, subsisting off the land. All the people living there were stunned when Jian Chen arrived at the small village with over 20 gods tied up by the primordial god silk. Many of the pregnant women emerged from the buildings with their large bellies. They stared at Jian Chen and the others with curiosity. All of these women had been born at a moment of Een on a day of Een in a month of Een. None of them were particularly old. There were even girls who seemed younger than 10. Clearly, they were the people who had been brought in most recently. As for the men, they only amounted to 20% of the people here. Their purposes were evident. Who are you? At this moment, a burly man stood forward. He stared at Jian Chen and the others cautiously. Jian Chen talked, explaining the situation to all the people trapped here. When the women learnt that only death awaited them after being forced in here, all of them fell silent. Sorrow filled their eyes. A few of them were sent in here after they reached adulthood, so they knew about the outside world. There were also some people who had been brought in here as infants. They had only heard about the outside world, and they had never seen it with their own eyes. I thought once I gave birth to my child, I would be able to leave here and go home. I never thought the reality would be so brutal. A woman sobbed sorrowfully. Don't worry. I've already destroyed the Mo family. These people are all elders of the Mo family. If you want revenge, here's your opportunity. Jian Chen took out the startling rainbow sword and threw it over. It directly stabbed into the earth before the women. The startling rainbow sword completely hid its glow, making it seem like an ordinary treasured sword. Chapter 1878. The Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. Many of the gathered mortal women immediately paled in fright when they saw the startling rainbow sword on the ground and connected it with revenge. Many of them felt the power drain from their limbs. Living here, they had gone on without any conflict. They rarely ever saw blood, let alone killing people. Even the thought of killing people frightened them. They stood there for a very long time. Finally, an older woman stepped forward with hatred in her eyes. She lifted the startling rainbow sword from the ground and arrived before a god of the Mo family. She said with gritted teeth, "You are too vicious to lock up so many sisters here, only to kill us when our babies are about to be born. I originally thought we'd be free after we leave this place, and we'd be able to return to our lives in the outside world. I never thought we were all waiting for such a horrific fate. You deserve to die. You're all mortals, mere ants. Even if you have weapons in your hands, you can't harm us at all." A god stared at the woman disdainfully, and he acted with condescension. Sorrow filled the woman's face. She roared out furiously and directly stabbed the startling rainbow sword towards the god with the weapon in two hands. Even though the god's gaze was filled with contempt, he knew that the startling rainbow sword was extremely powerful as a high-quality saint artifact. However, the person wielding it was a mortal right now. As such, let alone using the power of the high-quality saint artifact, even just piercing his body was impossible. This was because mortals did not have much strength at all. However, the outcome surprised him. When the startling rainbow sword touched him, there was a flash of powerful sword chi. Before the sword chi, his body as a god was as fragile as paper, and the startling rainbow sword easily pierced him. The woman who wielded the startling rainbow sword did not even feel the slightest bit of resistance. The sword had stabbed the god in the chest, with its tip emerging from the other side. Blood dripped from it. The god turned his head with great difficulty towards Jian Chen, who was behind him. He opened his mouth to say something, but he did not have the power at all. The light in his eyes faded quickly, becoming hollow. His body collapsed whilst maintaining the same posture. A strand of sword chi had directly plunged into his head when the startling rainbow sword stabbed through his body, wiping out his soul. The death of the god made all the other elders from the Mo family pale. Despair filled their eyes. They naturally understood that the person who killed the god was not the mortal woman, but Jian Chen. If it were not for Jian Chen's secret help, it would be impossible for the woman to lift the sword with her mortal strength, let alone approach it. Although the sword was only 3 fingers wide and 1.3 meters long, it weighed several dozen tons. Afterwards, the other gods of the Mo family naturally suffered the same fate. They were all stabbed to death by the women with the startling rainbow sword. All of their souls were wiped out, and they were unable to escape. Jian Chen released everyone in the spatial saint artifact after dealing with the matter. He took out a few low-grade divine crystals from the space rings of the gods and settled down these people in the provincial city of the Dong'an province. At the same time, he contacted a few people in the clan to secretly take care of them so that they could live their lives safely. 3 days later, Jian Chen bid farewell to everyone. He asked Shan Jian to continue protecting the clan. Then, he left the Dong'an province all by himself. He used the teleportation formation in the clan and arrived in the divine kingdom of Qingyan. After that, he directly made his way towards the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. The Een Mountains of Seven's Despair were located on the boundary between the divine kingdom of Qingyang and the divine kingdom of Datian. It was an extremely large mountain range. As a thick layer of rainbow, poisonous miasma covered the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair all year round. Many things that grew there were also poisonous. As a result, very few people set foot in the mountain range. Even when a few valuable resources grew in there, people rarely took the risk to enter the place. This was because the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair possessed another name in the region, and that was the Grave of Gods. It was called that because in the depths of the mountains, even people as powerful as god kings could end up dead. The poisonous miasma was simply too powerful. Not only could it corrode the body, but it could also eat away at the soul as well. On this day, a young man who only seemed to be in his 20s appeared before the deathly silent foot of the mountains. The young man was handsome. His long hair ran down his shoulders while his gaze was rather complicated. It was ordinary sometimes and profound like ink at other times. It would also become sharp like swords at other times, which was enough to pressure people. His face possessed a sense of determination and willpower that did not match his age. Currently, he advanced with small but firm steps towards the mountains. Although he did not move quickly, he would travel an extremely great distance with each step. In just a few steps, he had moved several kilometers. Then he directly submerged into the thick, rainbow miasma. The miasma here really is powerful. I've just entered its range, and my body already feels uncomfortable. Jian Chen frowned slightly as he stood in the rainbow miasma. He found that it was far more powerful than he had imagined it to be. And I'm only on the outskirts. The miasma is the thinnest here. If deities enter this place, they'll probably struggle to even last half a minute. Another 100 meters in would be enough to kill gods in just half a minute. No wonder even god kings can die here. The miasma really is powerful, Jian Chen murmured to himself. He circulated his chaotic force and pushed the defenses of his chaotic body to the maximum before advancing towards the depths with firm steps. The miasma affected the usage of the senses of the soul. Not only was Jian Chen's vision affected in the miasma, limiting him to only a range of 1,000 meters, but even the senses of his soul were affected, and it was only able to engulf a range of 10 kilometers. Moreover, the miasma could even eat away at the senses. Whenever Jian Chen let his senses of the soul out, he could not keep it out for long. He had to make it recede within 15 seconds. Poisonous organisms thrived within the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair. Not only were all the plants here poisonous, but there were also many venomous animals around as well. As Jian Chen advanced further, the miasma thickened as well while the poisonous organisms around him became more and more powerful. Not only did the poisonous organisms include magical beasts at godhood, but it also included various plants. The plants had lived for extremely long times, so some had gradually developed intelligence. They possessed extraordinary power. If gods had to face against them, they would definitely struggle to survive. Suddenly, a colorful flower that was 10 meters wide emerged from the soil. Each petal possessed potent poison as it closed together with lightning speed. At that moment, the flower had devoured Jian Chen completely. It was quick, just too quick. Jian Chen could not even dodge. Chapter 1879. Poison or Treasure? However, soon after it devoured Jian Chen, the colorful poisonous flower began to tremble heavily in an unnatural manner. Its huge petals became covered with cracks very soon as inky green poison flowed out from the cracks. Squeak, 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 squeak. The flower produced strange sounds as if it was in pain. Its huge petals that had wrapped around Jian Chen shook violently. Afterwards, it suddenly began to struggle. Inky green poison spurted out like a fountain. The huge petals struck the ground heavily as it struggled painfully, creating a huge hole in the ground and making the earth tremble. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud sound, and the flower exploded. It was blasted to pieces as its inky green poison splashed into the air. It was extremely poisonous. The poison was so potent that it was already enough to pose a great threat to overgods. As the flower exploded, Jian Chen, who it had just devoured, was exposed once again. A layer of flickering light protected, giving off light like the sun. Powerful sword intent radiated from him, which actually caused the rainbow miasma around to thin out slightly. Jian Chen had forced it back. With Jian Chen's current battle prowess, he would struggle to find an equal opponent among overgods. As long as he did not venture into the very depths of the mountain range, there really was not much that could threaten him. This flower's strength has actually reached early overgod, and it's skilled in ambushes. With its natural cover, it can catch people off guard. Probably even mid-overgods will suffer quite a bit even if they manage to survive. Jian Chen slowly receded the light around him. He stared at the body of the flower that had been blasted to pieces as a light flickered in his eyes. At this moment, a powerful ripple of energy attracted Jian Chen's attention. He walked over, and with a wave of his hand, a powerful gust struck the ground, blasting away the remaining tendrils of the flower. Immediately, a fist-sized, inky green pearl appeared before Jian Chen. Pure and powerful energy circulated within it vigorously. Jian Chen's eyes immediately narrowed when he saw the pearl. He said, This is the core of the flower. A strange light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes. He extended his hand, made a gesture, and the core flew into his hand. Jian Chen frowned when the core entered his hand. He only sensed a stab of pain in his hand. His hand that had come in contact with the core rapidly blackened. The poison on the core was eating away at his flesh. What powerful poison! Jian Chen could not help but sigh in amazement. He circulated his chaotic force and forced the poison out. Even his corroded hand rapidly recovered. In just a few seconds, his hand had returned to its previous state. Now, with the circulation of chaotic force, the poison within the core was unable to harm Jian Chen anymore. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered. He stared at the core in his hand with great interest and murmured, "The flower's strength is equivalent to an early over-god, while this core basically contains all the essence of its energy. If I can purge the poison from inside..." Jian Chen's eyes began to shine. He looked around and saw the other plants in the surroundings. A while later, Jian Chen put the core away and continued on his way. He had considered immediately refining the energy within the core to cultivate. After all, the core belonged to an early over-god existence. The energy inside was so terrifying that even 10,000-year god origin pills paled in comparison. However, his current cultivation level was only equivalent to a god. His chaotic force could fend off the poison from the flower, but it was unable to refine it. As for his late over-god level comprehension of the laws of the sword, it was only his level in terms of comprehension of laws. It was useless for refining the poison in the core. As a result, he could only put the poisonous core away for now. Unbeknownst to Jian Chen, the moment he killed the flower, a tremendous sea-like presence had slowly awakened within a huge cave in the very depths of the mountain range. As the presence awakened, the entire mountain top trembled violently. All the organisms there lied down and trembled as fear filled all their eyes. One of this king's clones has been slain by an outsider. An extremely powerful mental pulse emerged from the cave, transforming into a furious roar. It caused the ground in the cave to shake violently. An extremely huge and colorful flower gradually emerged. The flower was exactly the same as the colorful flower that Jian Chen had killed. The only difference was its size, and the difference was actually quite drastic. The flower he had killed before was only 10 meters across, while the flower here was several hundred meters wide. Calm down. We cannot disobey the 9th prince's commands. Unless the outsider sets foot in our territory of his own accord, we can't attack him. If the 9th prince knows what happens, you'll be in deep trouble, an ancient voice boomed out. A huge face appeared out of nowhere in the huge cave. It was filled with wrinkles, making it seem extremely ancient. The appearance of the face was clearly condensed from a sliver of power from the soul. The huge flower radiated with powerful killing intent, which grew colder and colder. In the end, it did not set foot out of the cave. It only gave off a cold metal pulse. Outsider, this king will wait for you here. I hope you don't disappoint me. The outsider basically knows that the depths of the mountain range is a forbidden zone. Although the outsider is powerful, he may not necessarily have the guts to come here. Qi Zong, you have to think of an idea that will provide you with the chance to avenge your clone, said the ancient voice. Jian Chen constantly advanced towards the depths of the mountain range. He was currently located in the general region. The miasma there had reached an extremely terrifying level. Even late overgods could not remain there for more than 4 hours. Jian Chen was only able to stand there safely thanks to the toughness of the chaotic body, and the protection of his light from the laws of the sword. As a result, he had no reason to fear the miasma around here. However, his vision had already shrunken from the initial 1,000 meters to just 500. Jian Chen rarely used the senses of his soul now. The miasma was just too powerful here. Once he let it out, the miasma would rapidly corrode it away. As a result, in just a few seconds, his head would begin spinning. I've killed many demonified plants as well as quite a few poisonous beasts. It's just a pity that I haven't been able to collect many cores. I don't know what this is all about. Not all demonified plants have cores, while basically all the poisonous beasts possess a monster core. Among the plants and beasts I've killed, there are a total of 9 that have reached the level of overgods. Apart from 3 poisonous beasts, the remaining are all plants, and I've only managed to collect 3 cores from the 6 of them. Jian Chen ran some calculations. Although he had not found any heavenly resources that could heal the soul along the way, he had found quite a lot of useful things. The only pity was that all the poisonous beasts and plants he killed did not possess space rings, so he did not even obtain a single divine crystal. Chapter 1880. The album stone heart flower. With a flip of his hand, Jian Chen took out the 3 monster cores from his space ring. The 3 monster cores were of the same sizes as the cores from the plants. They did not seem much different from the plant cores on the outside. They were also inky green and possessed powerful poison. These were monster cores equivalent to over-gods. They were also the greatest monster cores that Jian Chen had ever seen in his life. However, Jian Chen felt extremely helpless as he stared at the 3 powerful monster cores. He experienced unspeakable hardships. After reaching the 10th layer of the chaotic body, he had ingested the golden ginseng from God King Duanmu's space ring, as well as quite a few high-grade heavenly resources and several dozen 10,000-year god origin pills. These items had all allowed his chaotic Niden to grow. He was quite close to the 11th layer now. Perhaps, he only needed to refine 3 monster cores at the level of overgods to break through successfully. Even if the 3 monster cores were not enough, he still possessed a few cores from the plants. It would not be a problem for him to reach the 11th layer. However, the part that made Jian Chen feel extremely helpless was that both the monster cores and plant cores possessed extremely powerful poison. It was far beyond the level that his chaotic force could refine. As a result, he currently possessed the resources to reach the 11th layer of the chaotic body, but he could not use it, which made him feel extremely conflicted. I'll probably need a God King to refine the poison in the plant cores and monster cores. Jian Chen sighed gently. He dismissed his feelings and continued on his way. His main purpose in coming to the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair was not to find plant cores and monster cores. Instead, he had come here for heavenly resources that could heal the soul. Along the way, he had discovered that quite a few heavenly resources grew here, but unfortunately, they had all been contaminated by the miasma, causing them to mutate and develop poison. They would only be detrimental if consumed. Jian Chen did not find a single, usable heavenly resource for healing the soul. After traveling for another dozen kilometers, Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. A white flower stood 100 meters away from him. It was only the size of a hand. It was enveloped by a sacred hazy white light. Even though the poisonous miasma surrounded it, the miasma was unable to penetrate the light, allowing the white flower to grow in the poisonous environment of the mountains. That's a white jade spirit platform flower. Jian Chen's eyes lit up, and he became excited. The white jade spirit platform flower was a heavenly resource that could heal the soul. It was of a similar grade to the soul-drawing lotus, making it an extremely high-grade and rare heavenly resource. At this moment, there was a loud beast roar. The ground trembled violently as a 6-meter-tall magical beast rushed over from afar. It seemed like a boar in that it was extremely fat, but it also possessed a set of wings on its back. Due to being simply too massive, its tiny wings were clearly not enough to take it into the air. However, its presence was so powerful that its appearance led to a short silence in the mountains. Even Jian Chen furrowed his eyebrows. A late overgod magical beast. Jian Chen stood as still as a rock. This was the most powerful existence he had encountered so far in the mountains, but he did not show any fear. The poisonous beast rushed over from the distance. It used its fat body to block the flower as it stared at Jian Chen furiously. It directly opened its huge mouth to produce a roar. At the same time, it spat out green poison from its mouth. The poison flew like an arrow towards Jian Chen. Daluo sword. At the same time, Jian Chen struck out as well. He directly used the Daluo sword in an attempt to finish the battle fast. The golden sword Qi directly tore through the wild boar's poison like a hot knife through butter, landing viciously on the beast's huge head. Immediately, potent poison splattered. A deep gash appeared on the beast's huge head. Its tremendous body had also been pushed back, and it landed on the ground heavily. This caused the ground to shake. Jian Chen protected himself with white light from the laws of the sword. He stood a step with the startling rainbow sword and crossed the 100-meter distance between them, arriving beside the white jade spirit platform flower. He directly picked it and stowed it away carefully. The wild boar-like beast became enraged when Jian Chen picked the flower. It produced an extremely furious roar, and its eyes became bloodshot. It charged at Jian Chen wildly. Its mountainous body directly tore through the vegetation, reducing the huge trees it collided with to dust. At that moment, the tiny wings on its back emitted a powerful pulse of energy. Like 2 wind blades, they chopped towards Jian Chen with lightning speed after a flash of light. Jian Chen was emotionless, and his eyes were cold. He slashed out with a startling rainbow sword as it shone brightly. The resplendent sword qi caused the miasma in the surroundings to retreat, while the bright white light illuminated the entire forest. Boom! The sword qi collided with the blades from the beast's wings. There was a loud sound from the collision of powerful energy, and a storm of energy that swept the surroundings was formed. It kicked up soil from the group and obliterated the surrounding vegetation. The miasma that filled every inch of the surroundings churned violently. After the attack, Jian Chen remained where he was. He stood as still as a mountain. His sword shone brightly, completely obscuring the blade. However, the huge poisonous beast emitted a chilling wail. It was filled with pain. Its two small wings had been chopped off from its back. Green blood had dyed its entire body as it struggled painfully. Spurt! It was also at this time that Jian Chen stabbed out with the startling rainbow sword. With a flash of light, it penetrated the beast's head and wiped out its soul. The beast's huge body immediately flopped down, losing all signs of life. Even its monster core was removed by Jian Chen. The startling rainbow sword vanished from Jian Chen's hand. He looked into his space ring to see the flower he had just picked and filled showed a faint smile. He said, "I've finally found a heavenly resource that can heal the soul. I just wonder whether a single album stone heart flower will be enough to awaken Kai Ya or not. I better find some more to be on the safe side." Jian Chen analyzed to himself. He was confident that as long as he did not set foot into the very depths of the mountains, there were very few organisms that could threaten him with his strength. Suddenly, a unique fragrance wafted over. Jian Chen only took a single breath of it, and he felt his soul shudder violently. He felt like all the power of his soul that he had lost during the time in the mountains had been replenished in a single moment. At the same time, he felt his soul become even more consolidated and powerful compared to before. Of course, this was only an illusion caused by the breath of fragrance. Even though that was the case, Jian Chen gathered his attention. A strange light filled his eyes. His soul was already so powerful, yet just a single breath of the fragrance could make him feel like that. He immediately determined that the heavenly resource that the fragrance originated from was of a terrifying grade. This should also be a heavenly resource that can heal the soul. Although I haven't seen it, I know just from its smell. It's extremely like to have reached the 9th grade of the immortal tier. It's at a far higher grade compared to the soul-drawing lotus or the albumstone heart flower. Jian Chen's breathing became rather ragged. He looked in the direction that the fragrance came from and only saw a thick layer of miasma. Chapter 1881. A God King's Pursuit. The location of the whatever gave off that fragrance should be quite far away from me. It's a pity that the rainbow miasma is affecting my vision and senses of the soul, so I am unable to see as far as where the heavenly resource is. I can only determine its direction from where the fragrance comes from. Jian Chen stared in the direction of the fragrance and immediately hurried off in that direction. Like a ghost, Jian Chen silently moved through the miasma-covered mountain ranges. He moved extremely quickly. Along the way, he naturally came across many dangers. He only ended up entangling with some powerful plants. However, with Jian Chen's current strength, there was basically no organism that could threaten him as long as he did not come across any god kings. As such, he obviously dealt with them all with great ease. Unfortunately, none of them possessed cores. The number of cores at the level of overgods on Jian Chen was the same as before, only amounting to 6. This was a huge harvest to him, far greater than the high-grade divine crystals he could have collected from killing other overgods. If it were not for the fact that the plant cores and monster cores possessed poison, any single one of them would be worth several dozen blocks of high-grade divine crystal. After Jian Chen had traveled 100 kilometers in the direction of the fragrance, he came to a sudden halt. He frowned as he stared at the coiling miasma up ahead. He sensed that something was off. What is this heavenly resource? Its fragrance is able to travel so far even in the unique environment of the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. I've traveled for 100 kilometers, yet I haven't even been able to get a glance of the heavenly resource, Jian Chen thought. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty. He did not continue on his way for a while. Logically speaking, the miasma in a place like these mountain ranges would affect the fragrances from all heavenly resources, causing the range of the fragrance to shrink. However, the fragrance I can smell has traveled 100 kilometers at the very least. Is there someone trying to bait me over? Or is the heavenly resource just at a terrifying grade, having surpassed the 9th grade of the immortal tier and reached the legendary god tier? As soon as Jian Chen thought that it was likely to be a god tier heavenly resource, his heart began to beat uncontrollably. However, he calmed down very soon. He stared ahead and became determined. He said to himself softly, "If I keep advancing, I'll be entering the very depths of the mountains. It's the most terrifying part of this place. Rumors have it that even god kings can die there." Although Jian Chen was confident in himself, he was not arrogant. He could move around in the general region of the mountains, but he was extremely wary of the very depths. He did not dare to set foot in there so easily. Even god kings could die there. He, a mere overgod, was an ant-like existence before god kings. If he came across any terrifying dangers, he would be doomed. However, the fragrance from in there had indeed piqued Jian Chen's interest. It was almost a fatal attraction to him, and it basically caused his blood to boil. This was because a 9th grade immortal tier or even a god tier heavenly resource was extremely rare. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. A high-grade heavenly resource like that is worth it for me to take the risk. Moreover, I have a god artifact to protect me. Coupled with the toughness of my chaotic body, I think I can retreat no matter what dangers I come across. Finally, Jian Chen made up his mind. He took out the armor from his space ring and put it on before continuing into the very depths of the mountains. The ancestor of the Mo family had completely repaired the external form of the armor. It wrapped around Jian Chen's body, only revealing his eyes. At the same time, a thin film protected even his eyes. It was truly airtight. Jian Chen became cautious when he set foot in the depths of the mountains. He advanced carefully as he paid close attention to his surroundings. He was extremely vigilant. His current location simply did not allow for him to be careless. In a place where even god kings could die, he would be doomed if was inattentive for even the slightest moment. After I've entered the depths, all the sounds of the birds and beasts have vanished. It's deathly silent. That all means that it's extremely dangerous and extremely terrifying here. So terrifying that the poisonous beasts that are on par to overgods dare not to set foot here. Jian Chen's eyes shone. He advanced extremely cautiously in the direction of the fragrance. After advancing for a few more kilometers, a huge cave appeared before Jian Chen. The cave was gloomy and because of the miasma, Jian Chen was unable to see through the darkness. However, the fragrance that had spread to 100 kilometers away originated from this cave. Jian Chen erased his presence. Under the complete protection of the god artifact, he approached the cave carefully. However, just when Jian Chen had advanced halfway, he suddenly came to a halt. He sensed the presence of death looming over him rapidly. At that moment, his body had become abnormally cold. Even his blood seemed to stop flowing. Jian Chen responded extremely quickly. He directly retreated as quickly as he could while forming a seal with one hand. He used the linear lightning release without any hesitation to flee. At the same time, a thick vine burst out from the ground where Jian Chen had just been standing. It basically brushed past Jian Chen's chest, shooting towards the sky with a powerful pulse of energy. It had almost struck him. God King. Jian Chen's heart shivered. Without thinking too much, he used his sword technique and a light surrounded him. Afterwards, he turned into a bolt of lightning and directly fled outwards. You want to go? It's not that easy. Stay behind for this king. A powerful mental pulse shook through the forest. It was filled with fury and extremely heavy killing intent. With that, the ground cracked and huge vines burst out. Each vine possessed terrifying energy. The energy was so great that space shook, and the surrounding miasma dispersed. It possessed a devastating might. Swish! 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 The vines burst through the air. It seemed to break free from the limits of space, shooting into the distance in a single instance. It pursued Jian Chen, who had transformed into a bolt of lightning. However, even though the vines were extremely fast, Jian Chen's linear lightning release was even faster. The distance between the two of them rapidly increased. Duo T, stop him. Another mental pulse appeared when the vines could not catch up to Jian Chen. The pulse directly emanated to another cave nearby. Qizong, you owe me a favor, a rough and heavy voice boomed out from the cave. With that, Jian Chen suddenly felt his body tighten. The space around him froze in that instance, trapping him there firmly like a jail. He struggled to even move a finger. Profound sword chi. With a thought, a finger-sized sword chi appeared above his head. It radiated with surging sword intent, which was extremely surprising. Boom! The profound sword chi directly struck the frozen space, causing it to shake violently. The jail formed from frozen space broke apart loudly. This intruder has some skill. An interjection of great surprise rang out from the second cave. However, after Jian Chen was stopped temporarily, the thick vines caught up. They wrapped around him in layers, completely binding him. Jian Chen's heart sank. He directly launched the second strand of profound sword chi at the vines. However, the vines were far tougher than he could imagine. The profound sword chi only managed to cut through 2 of them. Not only did it fail to get through all the vines on him, but it had even caused more vines to wrap around him. Chapter 1882. A desperate stand. More and more vines wrapped around Jian Chen, growing tighter and tighter. In the end, every single vine seemed to have become an extremely tough wire that was countless times more powerful than steel. It wrapped around Jian Chen with an extremely terrifying force as if it was trying to crush Jian Chen. Jian Chen was completely immobilized. The vines were extremely powerful such that no matter how he struggled and no matter what technique he used, he was unable to break free. Now, even with his strength at peak over God, he was unable to even move a finger. This was because he currently faced a God King. At the same time, he felt that this God King was far more powerful than the Grand Imperial Protector from the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Creak! The tightening vines rubbed against his armor, producing an ear-splitting sound. If it were not for the God artifact, the vines probably would have crushed Jian Chen's body to pieces. I didn't think the intruder would be wearing a piece of armor. It's a God artifact, something that even infinite primes don't possess. It's just a pity that the armor is damaged and no longer perfect. A heavy, rough voice boomed out from the second cave again. It was filled with much interest. Qi Zong, you can't use this God artifact, so you take the person, and I'll take the armor. I'll count it as you returning the favor. As the voice spoke, an extremely burly, bare-chested and bald man emerged from the second cave. The man's appearance was nothing special. The only thing that stood out was an imprint between his eyebrows. The imprint radiated with the power of laws. It seemed to disturb the surrounding space, causing the space around him to tremble gently as if he controlled it. You can take the armor, but just don't let him escape. Qi Zong produced a mental pulse. Don't worry. I control this space. No matter how fast he is, he won't be able to escape, the man said confidently. The vines around Jian Chen suddenly loosened, and he immediately regained mobility. However, the vines did not retreat. Instead, they filled the surroundings, forming a huge cage that trapped Jian Chen, preventing him from escaping. The bald man also stood within the cage of vines. He stared at the God artifact on Jian Chen's body as he seemed to covet it. Even though Jian Chen knew it was very difficult for him to escape, he could not just sit there and wait for his death after he regained his mobility. He took out a few soul recovery pills and ate them to replenish the power of the soul he had depleted from using the 2 strands of profound sword chi. At the same time, he formed seals with his hands to fend off the man with his full strength. Daluo sword. Tai sword technique. With a flash of gold and silver light, Jian Chen basically used the 2 techniques together. They radiated with sword intent as they shot towards the bald man. The bald man stood there with his arms crossed. He stared at Jian Chen scornfully. He directly ignored the 2 strands of sword chi from Jian Chen. The 2 strands of sword chi really were very powerful. They were enough to pose great threats to late-over gods, but they were simply too weak in the eyes of the God King. But surprisingly, before the 2 strands of sword chi could approach the bald man, they collided together and produced a great boom. Powerful ripples of energy and scattered sword chi wreaked havoc in the surroundings, forming an extremely frightening storm. It directly rammed into the cage formed by the vines. However, the vines were extremely tough. The energy was enough to cause the expressions of over-gods to change, but it was nothing to God Kings. The storm of energy was firmly locked within the cage. Jian Chen's intentions were never to have the storm of energy burst through the vines. At the moment the explosion happened, a teleportation formation disc appeared in his hand. Borrowing the storm of energy as a cover, he activated the disc as quickly as possible. You're a mere over-god. If you really escaped before me, Would I still have the dignity left to see other people in the future? Freeze. The bald man made fun of him. When he said these final words, Jian Chen's body became immobilized instantly. The space around him had suddenly frozen. Not only was his body affected, but the explosion of energy from the 2 strands of sword qi also froze at that moment as well. Jian Chen's heart sank. He looked at the bald man. His control over space had reached such a powerful level. Even if Jian Chen exerted his full strength, he could break through this simple space freeze. God Kings are actually so frightening. Jian Chen's heart completely sank. This was the first time he had fought against God Kings. He discovered that he was unable to resist against them at all. The God artifact is mine now. Duo Ti's burly body appeared before Jian Chen like he had teleported, and he removed the armor from Jian Chen's body. Since Jian Chen was unable to refine the armor, he only wore it on him, so Duo Ti was able to take it off him easily. He examined it in his hand fondly as he smiled. He was extremely delighted. Qi Zong, I'll leave this intruder to you. After taking the armor, Duo Ti directly left. Even though the space around him had returned to its previous state, Jian Chen became entangled by the thick vines again. The ground shook violently. As thick cracks spread out rapidly, a colorful flower that was several hundred meters in width gradually burst out. It shone with rainbow light, which was an enchanting sight. So it turns out a flower is keeping me trapped. Jian Chen's eye narrowed when he saw the flower. Jian Chen had seen the flower before. He had once killed a flower like that soon after he had entered the mountains. Aside from the size, everything else was the same. The vines around him were the countless strands of roots from the flower. Intruder, you killed my clone. I want to suck you dry, devour your flesh, and then torture your soul. I'll let you understand pain that is worse than death to avenge my clone. The huge flower was unable to speak, so it emitted a furious mental pulse. After Jian Chen lost the protection of his god artifact, the roots wrapped around him penetrated into his flesh. All the blood that flowed out was sucked dry by the roots. Jian Chen truly faced a threat of death right now. At the same time, in Jian Chen's space ring, Kai Ya's eyelashes actually trembled gently within her crystal casket as if she wanted to open her eyes. The 7-colored heaven-devouring beast on the casket sensed something. It suddenly opened its eyes and stared at Kai Ya. Its clever eyes were filled with doubt as well as some eagerness. Unfortunately, Kai Ya's eyelashes only trembled and that was all. Outside, even though Jian Chen faced death, he was composed. He stared at the huge flower calmly and said, "Is that so? The flower I killed before was actually your clone. However, killing me won't be that easy." With that, a streak of azure and violet light surged towards the sky from Jian Chen's body. It was dazzling, bursting through the colorful miasma and directly into the sky. It turned into 2 swords that caused the surroundings to pale in comparison. Twin swords fusion. Jian Chen roared out. The voice seemed to possess endless charm, ringing across the entire mountain range and even penetrating the rock. His left eye had actually become completely azure, while his right eye had become completely violet. They shone with startling light. "Master, the chance of you surviving is less than 10% if you fuse the 2 swords. The voices of the sword spirits rang out in Jian Chen's head, but they did not stop him. They understood what kind of danger he was facing right now. Chapter 1883. 9 God Kings. Even if my chance of surviving is less than 10%, it's still a chance for survival. If I don't do this, I'm dead for sure. From what the God King flower has shown, it's far more powerful than the Grand Imperial Protector of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. I can only rely on the fusion of the 2 swords to survive now. Moreover, even if my soul disperses after the fusion of the 2 swords, I can't let this flower have it easy. It must pay a heavy price." Jian Chen said in his head. His eyes were determined. He had already run out of options. The flower was so powerful that he could not threaten it at all, even if he used the profound sword qi. This was because the disparity between their strength was just too great. If you fuse the 2 swords, the flower will be dead for sure. "But you, master." The sword spirit sighed. 2 strands of azure and violet sword qi hovered above Jian Chen's head. They tore through the colorful miasma, directly reaching for the skies, giving off a devastating might. Under Jian Chen's control, the 2 strands of sword qi gradually approached each other. They were about to be fused into one. Immediately, as the 2 strands of sword qi constantly drew closer, A terrifyingly devastating pressure gradually charged up in the surroundings. It became more and more powerful, weaving chaos into the surroundings. The space in the area shook violently. The pressure was just too great. Before it, the world seemed to shake in fear. What is this? Qizong used its roots to wrap around Jian Chen tightly. In its eyes, Jian Chen was an existence as insignificant as an ant that could be slain in a single strike. However, at this moment, the terrifying presence that Jian Chen gave off actually made him shake uncontrollably. A sense of terror it had never experienced before filled its entire body silently. This was because it could taste the presence of death. It was so close. God damn it, what is this secret technique? It's so terrifying that even I feel shivers. The man who had taken Jian Chen's armor emerged from his cave again. His eyes had widened completely as he stared at Jian Chen in shock and disbelief. The intruder is using a devastating secret technique. Qizong, what are you hesitating for? Kill him. Don't let him finish charging up. In the distance, a huge, ancient tree made its way over with its roots. An ancient face appeared on its thick trunk that was filled with wrinkles. The face was stern. This was an ancient tree that had developed a consciousness. It also possessed the strength of a god king, and like Qizong, it was no ordinary god king. It was much more powerful than the grand imperial protector of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The appearance of the ancient tree caused Jian Chen's eyes to narrow as he tried to fuse the swords. He never thought that there would actually be 3 god kings hidden within the depths of the mountains. Kill him quick, Qizong, hurry up and do it. However, it did not stop there. There were far more than 3 god kings hidden within the depths of the mountain range. After the ancient tree appeared, a few more figures emerged from the colorful mist. The presences they gave off were extremely shocking. 8 god kings. Even Jian Chen had become stunned now. In such a small mountain range, there were actually 8 god kings hiding. At this moment, a hiss rang out. A snake that was only as thick as a bowl and frighteningly long slithered out from the depths of the miasma. It also stared at Jian Chen sternly with its small beady eyes. The long, thin snake possessed a gold and silver stripe all the way from head to tail. A golden striped silver snake. Jian Chen's heart jumped. He recognized this thin, long snake instantly. It was of the same species as newbies. The snake was also a god king. 9 god kings. Jian Chen felt bitter inside. Only now did he understand just what place he had come to. There was actually a nest of god kings hidden in this area, and they were all experts that could use poison. In the next moment, Jian Chen bellowed out. His body shone with bright, azure and violet light as he poured all his strength into fusing the 2 swords. With his current strength, he was unable to fuse the 2 swords instantaneously. He needed to charge it up. However, Jian Chen basically wished that the swords could fuse instantaneously right now. Blood oozed from the corner of his lips. The fusion of the 2 swords was just too terrifying. Even before they had fused, he already had to endure the backlash. Even if I have to die here today, I'll drag a few of you down with me. Jian Chen had already embraced death. At the same time, Qizong struck out as hard as he could in an attempt to stop Jian Chen from fusing the swords. Suddenly, something happened. A gentle light descended from the sky. It pierced through the layers of miasma and surrounded Jian Chen as a screen. The screen of light seemed thin, but it was extremely powerful. When Qizong's full-powered attack landed, it was actually unable to smash through the paper-thin screen. What powerful laws! Who is it? Qizong produced a mental pulse as the huge flower swayed gently. Each petal rapidly closed up as it began charging up a great power. The screen of light that had blocked its attack was not powerful by itself. Instead, it was the laws that were powerful. The expressions of the other 8 god kings in the mountain range changed slightly. They all looked at the screen of light before Jian Chen, and they became stern. Naturally, Jian Chen sensed the sudden change. He stared at the layer of gentle light around him as a sliver of joy appeared on his face. He was extremely familiar with the gentle light. He was so familiar with it that he immediately thought of a beautiful figure. You better stop your secret technique soon. I don't know what it is, but it's far more powerful than what you can use right now. You'll end up paying an unimaginable price if you use it. A familiar voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. A woman in a white dress slowly descended from the sky as pure white moonlight revolved around her. Her beauty was striking. A bright moon seemed to exist behind her, making her seem like an immortal crossing the moon. She seemed otherworldly, having transcended mortal affairs. The presence she gave off was as tremendous as the ocean, and it directly enveloped the entire mountain range. It was extremely terrifying, and it was enough for the surroundings to shake and the clouds to churn. Her cold eyes gradually scanned past the 9 god kings. They possessed some contempt, as if she was looking at 9 ants. Chapter 1884. Fairy Hao Yu steps forward. Fairy Hao Yu. Jian Chen's voice was filled with delight. He had never thought that in this moment of great danger, the Fairy Hao Yu who had left several dozen years ago would actually appear here. Moreover, she was actually so powerful, far greater than she was when she had originally escaped from God King Duanmu's dwelling. Just a layer of protection she cast down now could easily block Qi Zhang's attack. Jian Chen understood that the great problem he was facing would be resolved with Fairy Hao Yu's appearance. Without any hesitation, he immediately stopped the fusion of the twin swords. At the same time, the sword spirits secretly assisted Jian Chen as well. They used their full strength to separate the 2 swords that were just about to fuse together. Jian Chen experienced a powerful backlash again during this time. Blood completely drained from his face as he became haggard. He gave off a sense of weakness. The backlash from the fusion of the 2 swords was simply too powerful. Just the process of fusion, before they had actually fused together, had made Jian Chen become so heavily injured. If it were not for his chaotic body that was extremely tough, he would only have half a life left even if he managed to avoid death. We belong to the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Who are you? Which clan or sect do you belong to? Qi Zhang's huge petals were closed tightly. He produced a mental pulse that was filled with sternness. At the same time, the other 8 god kings hidden in the depths of the mountain range emerged as well. Some of them had already assumed human form, while others remained the same as before, similar to Qi Zhang. They stood with Qi Zhang. All of them stared at Fairy Hao Yu extremely sternly. Fairy Hao Yu did not pay attention to the 9 god kings. She turned around to study Jian Chen and frowned. Didn't I give you a jade talisman to contact me when I left? Why didn't you crush it to contact me now that you're in danger? If it weren't for the fact that I just happened to be passing by, you'd probably die today. Jian Chen smiled bitterly. Before me, there are 9 god kings. Although I can't tell what their exact strength is, they must be beyond early god king. I have no idea just how much strength you've recovered in a few short decades. If I called you over, and you weren't their opponent, wouldn't I have doomed you instead? Moreover, if you were extremely far away, how would I be able to ask for help in such a short amount of time? I don't even know if you can make it in time. That's somewhat reasonable. However, the 9 people before you are all late god kings. They're indeed on a whole different level compared to early god kings, said Fairy Hao Yu. Afterwards, she took out a pill and gave it to Jian Chen. She said, "This is a god-tier healing pill. Eat it." God-tier pill. Jian Chen was secretly tongue-tied. God-tier pills were on a whole different level compared to immortal-tier pills. Every single one of them could be worth cities. Even many god kings did not possess pills at such a level. He had never thought that in just a few short decades, Fairy Hao Yu could even take out god-tier pills. I'll return the god artifact to you. Sir, please leave immediately, the bald man said emotionlessly and reluctantly tossed over the armor that he had not even managed to wear. Duo T decided to hand back the armor in such a straightforward manner because the armor was damaged, so its value had been greatly reduced. Moreover, he could tell that Fairy Hao Yu was powerful. There was no reason to gain such a powerful opponent for just a damaged god artifact. Fairy Hao Yu caught the god artifact. A sliver of surprise appeared in her eyes, and then she handed the armor to Jian Chen. She said, "Jian Chen, you probably haven't come here without reason, right? You should be searching for something." That's right. Jian Chen explained why he had come to the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair. The expressions of the 9 god kings all changed when they heard that Jian Chen had come here in search of heavenly resources that could heal the soul. You really have come to the right place for heavenly resources that can heal the soul. Fairy Hao Yu smiled gently. She stared at the 9 god kings with deep meaning and said, "According to my knowledge, you lot just happen to have a void cloud flower with you. The flower has reached the 1st grade of the god tier, and its main effects are to heal the soul. Moreover, it can be used as nourishment for a flower of ways. What do you want to do?" The eyes of all 9 god kings sharpened. They became filled with caution. You should understand what I want. Are you going to hand it over yourselves, or do I have to come to retrieve it myself? Fairy Hao said in a composed manner. The void cloud flower belongs to the 9th prince. Are you certain you want to take the 9th prince's things? You have to understand that the 9th prince is the person most likely to succeed the Blood Sun Empire as emperor. Even infinite primes have to show him some respect, the ancestor tree said in an attempt to scare off Fairy Hao. Who's the 9th prince? I really haven't heard of him before. However, not only do I want the void cloud flower, but I also want the flower of ways you have planted here, said Fairy Hao. Jian Chen basically understood everything from that. The 9th prince of the eternal Blood Sun Empire of the southern region had probably stationed the 9 god kings here with the intentions of raising a flower of ways. As for Fairy Hao, she had clearly come for the flower of ways. I just wonder what the flower of ways is. It seems quite precious, thought Jian Chen. The flower of ways is extremely crucial to the 9th prince. If you want the flower of ways, you'll have to step over our corpses first, said the old tree. Fairy Hao's face sank. She said, if that's the case, I can only retrieve it myself then. Suddenly, Fairy Hao began to shine brightly. She seemed to have become a huge moon, illuminating the surroundings with sacred and gentle light. It purged the thick miasma from the surroundings and filled the entire mountain range with a silvery glow. The moonlight engulfed all 9 god kings. The moonlight possessed the power of time. It could turn back time and mix the past with the future. Under the moonlight, the 9 people's appearances changed drastically. They became younger, while the tree and Qi Zhang's originally tremendous bodies shrank at a visible rate. An unbelievable thing was happening to their bodies. It was as if everything they had experienced in their lives were receding from them, returning them to the past. The even more terrifying part was that even their strength rapidly regressed. They fell from late God King to mid-God King, and then to early God King. This is an ability of time. Oh no, she has made us return to the past. The 9 God Kings cried out as their faces became ugly. Are you certain you want to take the 9th prince's things? The 9th prince will not spare you. Even if you are an infinite prime, he'll be able to cause you quite some trouble with his authority, Duo T called out. Chapter 1885. Such puny God Kings. Duo T would have been better off if he did not say that. A vicious light immediately flashed through Fairy Hao's eyes in response to his words. She immediately glared at the 9 God Kings who were gradually regressing under her ability, and revealed cold killing intent. If that's the case, I can only kill all 9 of you. Once you're all dead, that 9th prince won't know what happened here. Even if he learns what happens here, he won't know who took away the void cloud flower and the flower of ways, Fairy Hao said coldly. Originally, she did not come here with the intent to kill. She only wanted to take away the flower of ways, as it would be of great help in restoring her strength. However, Duo Ti's words made her want to kill them. Although the Blood Sun Empire was the eternal empire of the southern region and was extremely powerful, Fairy Hao did not treat them with any importance at all. She was only worried about whether it would bring trouble to Jian Chen's Tian Yuan clan. It was exactly because of that she changed her plans all of a sudden, making up her mind to leave no one alive. Fairy Hao grabbed at the space. A surging essence of the moon condensed in the air, instantly forming into a jade-white scepter in her hands. Even though the scepter had only been condensed from energy, it seemed exactly the same as the moon god scepter she had given to Yu in the past. Fairy Hao gripped the scepter as a moon shone brightly behind her. Extremely bright moonlight wrapped around her, illuminating the surroundings and the mountains. She gently swung her scepter, and 9 beams of light appeared simultaneously above the heads of the 9 god kings. Every single beam produced powerful pulses of energy, and contained the power of laws that far exceeded God King. Each and every beam was destructive. The 9 god kings from the mountains glowed. Powerful pulses of energy emanated from their bodies. They were unwilling to just die like this. Even though they knew that they were not Fairy Hao's opponent, they resisted with their full power, striking the beam of light above them as hard as they could. Boom! With a deafening sound, surging energy formed a storm. The laws in the surroundings wove into a mess. The collision created an extremely shocking disturbance as if it was about to rip through the space in the area. The entire mountain range trembled violently from the strikes as if a huge earthquake was happening. It was like the world was ending. Mountains collapsed, and the earth ripped open into huge chasms. The mountain below everyone was reduced to dust instantly. The 9 God Kings' attacks against Fairy Hao Yu really did possess the power to destroy worlds. If this were a provincial city like the one in the Dong'an province, these attacks would be enough to flatten the entire city. Even overgods would not be able to avoid death. So powerful. Jian Chen stood in the air behind Fairy Hao Yu. The terrifying ripples of energy before her were unable to reach him. He only stared on in awe as he felt extremely shocked inside. He felt that with his current strength, just the devastating ripples of energy were enough to leave him heavily injured. Fairy Hao Yu stood as still as a mountain. A screen formed from the power of laws stood before her. No matter how violent the energy was, it was unable to even ruffle her clothes. However, blood spurted from the mouths of all 9 God Kings, along with pieces of their internal organs. It fell like rain. The blood of God Kings had dyed the space red. All of them were pale and haggard now. They were extremely injured. Fairy Hao Yu was so powerful now that even when they worked together, it was basically a futile effort. Fall into formation. A God King called out. The God Kings ignored their injuries and fell into a formation as quickly as possible. They poured their strength together. Immediately, an even more tremendous pressure emanated from them. After working together, their resistance against Fairy Hao Yu's ability grew stronger and stronger. Their strength that had been suppressed to early God King recovered to mid-God King at that moment. A world set by laws, sword of chaos and annihilation. The 9 God Kings bellowed out, and their voices rang through the surroundings. Between the 9 of them, a blinding sword chi silently condensed. It directly shot towards Fairy Hao Yu with great pressure. The sword chi moved extremely fast, far quicker than Jian Chen's linear lightning release. It whistled through the air and seemed to punch through space, appearing before Fairy Hao Yu in a single instance. Jian Chen's face changed. The sword chi simply moved too quickly. It was so quick that he could not even react to it. He was not even able to see the sword chi with his naked eyes, and he could only sense the pressure it gave off. However, Fairy Hao Yu's face did not change at all. She remained just as composed as before. She lifted a slender hand of hers and gently extended it forwards. Fairy Hao Yu's movements clearly did not seem quick. As a matter of fact, it felt extremely slow. However, when she completed all her movements, the sword chi that was just about to strike her had only managed to advance a single inch. This scene would confuse many people. There seemed to be a difference in time between the two, where the flow of time was different. Disperse. Fairy Hao Yu called out gently and extended a finger. Immediately, the power of laws that had completely exceeded the level of God Kings descended, directly wrapping around the strand of sword chi. In the next moment, the sword chi that contained the power of 9 God Kings dispersed just like that. The laws that belonged to the primordial realm had directly grounded away. The expressions of the 9 God Kings changed drastically. All of them stumbled backwards uncontrollably as they stared at Fairy Hao Yu in complete fear. However, in the next moment, they looked at one another. As if they knew what each other was thinking, they all used their techniques and tried to flee without any hesitation at all. Some of them used secret techniques to escape, while others took out teleportation formation discs. In my domain, I can't let you escape. You're done for, Fairy Hao Yu said calmly. As expected, all 9 God Kings became despaired. The ones who had used secret techniques discovered that they remained stationary, while the ones who activated formation discs did not see any teleportation energy appear. I didn't want to kill you originally, but I have to kill you now, Fairy Hao Yu said emotionlessly. Killing intent appeared in her eyes, and with a wave of her staff, 9 powerful strands of moonlight force engulfed the 9 people with laws that belonged to the primordial realm. This time, the 9 God Kings were unable to resist at all. They had already been heavily injured, and their strength had been reduced. Their souls were directly wiped out under a single strike from Fairy Hao Yu. From the beginning till the end, Fairy Hao Yu had not moved from her position at all. She could suppress the God Kings with a wave of her hand and managed to slay 9 late God Kings in just a few moves. She was extremely composed throughout the entire process. Clearly, she had not used her full strength. Jian Chen watched this happen with his tongue tied. He felt like he was dreaming all the way until all 9 God Kings had died. He struggled to believe that this was real. A few decades ago, Fairy Hao Yu was only a soul. Even an Origin Realm expert could wipe her out. She was truly ant-like. However now, she killed 9 God Kings with the flip of her hand. Since when did God Kings become so puny? Chapter 1886. God Tier Heavenly Resource. Fairy Hao Yu. Have you completely recovered your strength? Jian Chen stared at Fairy Hao Yu's back. He was at quite a loss. Before him, there stood an extremely great expert, which made Jian Chen rather absent-minded. This was because he struggled to connect the invincible Fairy Hao Yu right now to the Fairy Hao Yu he had met on the Tian Yuan continent. Fairy Hao Yu turned around and stared at Jian Chen with her beautiful eyes. She shook her head. My cultivation level is only at early God King, but I've restored 80% of the power of my soul. I can use the power of laws from the primordial realm, which is why I could kill those 9 God Kings so easily. With that, Fairy Hao Yu suddenly gazed into the distance. Her deep eyes pierced through space and plunged into the very depths. She could see what was happening extremely far away. The disturbance we caused here is quite large. Quite a few people are hurrying over here right now. Let's go get the Flower of Ways and the Void Cloud Flower, said Fairy Hao Yu. With a wave of her sleeve, there was a terrifying ripple of energy that belonged to God Kings. Along with the power of laws that belonged to the primordial realm, they wrapped around Jian Chen and directly took him downwards. Jian Chen did not resist at all. Even though Fairy Hao Yu had not recovered her full power yet, her strength was still evident. She could be called supreme among God Kings with her comprehension at the primordial realm, even though she was only an early God King right now. Maybe, even Protector Xueqi, who is ranked 9th on the God King's throne, isn't Fairy Hao Yu's opponent, Jian Chen thought. He could not help but compare Protector Xueqi to Fairy Hao Yu. In the past, Fairy Hao Yu had heavily injured the strongest God King of the God Clan, Adriana, reducing her to just a soul. That had completely shocked Jian Chen. In Jian Chen's heart at that time, Shui Yunlan was the most powerful existence. She had reached a state of power that he struggled to even imagine. Many mountains in the mountain range collapsed, so the Flower of Ways and the Void Cloud Flower the 9 God Kings planted there were naturally buried under the rubble. Fairy Hao Yu brought Jian Chen straight to the very bottom. She erupted with her God King cultivation and began to clear away the surroundings, unearthing the Flower of Ways and the Void Cloud Flower. Both flowers were snow white. One possessed 9 petals and was surrounded by a white mist, obscuring the 9 petals at times. The other flower only had 3 petals. Complicated and profound patterns covered each petal. They blurred from time to time. Moreover, the patterns seemed to be still, but they also seemed to change at all times, resonating with the world and presenting the mysteries of laws. The 2 flowers did not grow in the soil. Instead, they grew on a huge jade platform. A powerful formation was carved into the platform, protecting the 2 flowers. The Flower of Ways has not matured yet, so its effects will be greatly reduced, but I can't care for that much right now. Even if it's wasting it, I have no regrets as long as I can recover some of my strength, Fairy Hao Yu said to herself gently. She stared at the flower with 3 white petals, and with a wave of her hand, it flew into her hand automatically. She tossed it into her space ring casually. Afterwards, the other flower with 9 petals landed in Fairy Hao Yu's hand as well. She passed it to Jian Chen and said, "This is a Void Cloud Flower. It is a first-grade God Tier heavenly resource. It's extremely effective for both healing the soul and recovering the power of the soul. Of course, the flower will be even more effective if it's refined into a pill. Unfortunately, there are just far too few alchemists who can refine God Tier heavenly resources into pills. They're just too hard to find." Jian Chen did not hold back, directly accepting the Void Cloud Flower. However, he frowned very soon and smiled bitterly. He passed the flower back to Fairy Hao Yu and said, "Fairy Hao Yu, the formation on it has already reached the level of God Kings. I can't remove it." Fairy Hao Yu nodded. "The people are almost here. Let's leave first and find a safe place so that I can remove the formation for you. If they see us here and that 9th prince hears about it, it'll be extremely bad for you. It might even lead to a disaster. Wait, let me take away the corpse of this golden-striped silver snake. It's of great use to me," said Jian Chen. He arrived before the golden-striped silver snake quickly and directly put the corpse away. Jian Chen also rummaged through the corpses of the other God Kings. There was only a single human among the 9 of them. The others were either magical beasts or plants. In the end, the God King level plant cores and monster cores obviously ended up in Jian Chen's hands as well. However, Fairy Hao Yu took away all the space rings on the God Kings. She wanted to use the resources in there to recover her strength as soon as possible. After all that, Fairy Hao Yu waved her sleeve. She made the air in the surroundings churn. The laws at the primordial realm descended and erased Jian Chen's presence from the mountain range, leaving behind only her presence. Then, she departed with Jian Chen. Soon after Fairy Hao Yu and Jian Chen had left, 5 figures shot over with lightning speed. They seemed to have fused with space, moving through the air silently and with great speed. They seemed to be able to traverse a huge distance in a single instance. In the blink of an eye, they arrived on the outskirts of the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair. Even though the 5 of them were god kings, they had all erased their presences and acted with a low profile. They stared at the very depths of the mountains sternly. It's the presence of the laws from a primordial realm expert. Has a primordial realm expert flattened the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair? A middle-aged man asked gruffly. He was wearing purple and gold dragon robes. The 4 other god kings remained silent. They stared into the depths of the mountains as they struggled to remain calm inside. These 5 god kings were the peak experts from the nearby divine kingdom of Datian and divine kingdom of Qingyang. 2 of them wore dragon robes and seemed dignified. They were the divine kings of the divine kingdom of Datian and the divine kingdom of Qingyang. The disturbances within the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair had drawn over all the god kings in the 2 divine kingdoms. Moreover, as time went on, more and more god kings gathered there. They came from the divine kingdom of 9 Stars, divine kingdom of Scarlet Clouds, divine kingdom of Kaiyuan, divine kingdom of Ether Cloud, divine kingdom of Balaj, and so on. Basically, all the god kings from the nearby divine kingdoms had hurried over. Even the grand imperial protector of the divine kingdom of Pingtian had come. They all entered the very depths of the mountains. However, it had already been reduced to a mess in there. The shock waves from the battle had basically flattened the mountains while the corpses of 8 god kings laid in the rubble. The presence of laws that belonged to primordial realm experts permeated the surroundings, giving off a great pressure. All the god kings who entered the place shivered in their hearts. Chapter 1887. Supreme Quality Saint Artifact. All the god kings in the nearby divine kingdoms had gathered here. They stared at the 8 god king corpses in the rubble, and all of them fell silent. None of them were able to remain calm at this sight. Their hearts were in turmoil. Before long, the god kings all dispersed. They did not touch a single thing there. Even for the god king corpses, they only looked at them from afar. They did not dare to approach it, as that could lead to some unneeded problems. At the same time, the divine king stood very casually on the tallest structure within the royal palace of the divine kingdom of Pingtian in simple, white clothes. His deep eyes were fixated in the direction of the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair. He had already expanded the senses of his soul. It crossed through the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian and the divine kingdom of Qingyang, plunging into the depths of the mountains. This person is so powerful. After quite a while, the divine king said this sternly. His face was extremely solemn. Jian Chen's presence has completely vanished from the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair. The primordial realm expert forcefully removed it. If it weren't for the fact that I knew already Jian Chen had entered the mountains, I definitely wouldn't have known someone else had entered the mountains beside the primordial realm expert. I can basically conclude that the primordial realm expert who devastated the mountains is the soul that appeared in God King Duanmu's dwelling before. However, I just wonder whether she has returned to her peak condition or not. The power of laws that have permeated the mountains has surpassed most primordial realm experts already. If she still hasn't recovered to her peak condition, then she is just too powerful. The divine king murmured to himself softly. The light in his eyes flickered uneasily. In an ancient mountain range within the divine kingdom of Pingtian, Jian Chen and Fairy Hao Yu stayed in a temporary cave that they had created. A huge luminous pearl was wedged into the ceiling, giving off gentle light that illuminated the cave. Jian Chen sat on the ground. He stared at Fairy Hao Yu, who also sat on the ground before him, or more accurately, he stared at the void cloud flower in Fairy Hao Yu's hands. The void cloud flower was similar to the flower of Ways. It was planted in the huge piece of jade and slowly absorbed the jade's formation to grow. Formations at the level of God Kings protected the flowers and the jade. Fairy Hao Yu was currently removing the formations. However, with her strength at the primordial realm, removing formations at the level of God Kings was naturally a piece of cake. The formation was destroyed after 2 hours. If it were not for the fact that Fairy Hao Yu was worried about damaging the flower, there would be completely no need for her to spend 2 hours with her strength. Once the laws of the primordial realm had descended, she would only need a single strike to obliterate the formation. Jian Chen held the ether cloud flower and sniffed its familiar fragrance. He was extremely excited inside. This was a god-tier heavenly resource. He was basically completely confident he could wake up Kaiya with the flower. The void cloud flower is precious, but it's only used to nourish the flower of ways. The flower of ways is what is truly precious, said Fairy Hao Yu. She stared at him and said sternly, the most precious part of the flower of ways is not the terrifying essence hidden inside, which can be used to increase a person's cultivation. Instead, it's the comprehension of the laws of the world within the flower. It can basically increase a god king's chance of reaching the primordial realm by 50%. Moreover, not only is the flower of ways effective for god kings, but it can even assist infinite primes to a certain degree as well. It can increase the chances for a breakthrough between minor cultivation levels by 20%. As a result, I can basically conclude that the flower of ways is a treasure for the 9th prince to break through to infinite prime. Its importance to him is evident. From today onwards, you have to be careful about the 9th prince. Once he finds any traces that lead back to you, it'll be extremely bad for you. After all, I can't always be by your side. Fairy Hao Yu warned Jian Chen seriously and sternly. Jian Chen was still weak right now after all. He was completely powerless against the 9th prince who possessed authority in the Eternal Blood Sun Empire of the southern region. This was because the Eternal Blood Sun Empire was basically the ruler of the southern region. Jian Chen nodded seriously. He also understood the importance of the matter. Afterwards, Jian Chen remembered something. He took out all the overgod plant cores and monster cores he had collected from the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair and asked Fairy Hao Yu to refine the poison within them. The monster cores at the level of overgods were filled with poison. With his current chaotic body, he was unable to absorb it directly. He needed a god king to refine the poison inside with the power from their cultivation. Now that there just happened to be an expert like that before him, Jian Chen would never miss the opportunity. Naturally, Fairy Hao Yu did not turn him down. She erupted with the cultivation of an early god king and directly refined the cores. The refinement lasted for an entire day. Only then did Fairy Hao Yu remove all the poison within the 6 cores. Only extremely pure and turbulent energy was left. After handing the 6 cores back to Jian Chen, Fairy Hao Yu said, I still can't refine the god king level cores on you with my current cultivation, so I'll leave them with you for now. Once I reach the primordial realm, I'll be able to refine them. Alright. I came across this piece of armor accidentally. It's a supreme quality saint artifact and possesses extraordinary defense. Just the armor itself can withstand several attacks from god kings. It's useless for me, so you take it. With a flip of her hand, an exquisitely crafted armor appeared. She directly tossed it to Jian Chen like it was garbage. Afterwards, Fairy Hao Yu bid farewell to Jian Chen. She left by herself, planning on using the Flower of Ways to recover some of her strength. Jian Chen sat in the cave by himself after her departure. He held the supreme quality saint artifact as his feelings became mixed. It had been painful for him to buy a high-quality saint artifact in the past, yet now, he had obtained a supreme quality saint artifact, and it was a defensive one at that. Defensive saint artifacts were worth far more than offensive saint artifacts at the same quality. Meanwhile, the armor he held right now had already reached supreme quality. It was so valuable that Jian Chen struggled to fathom its value. Supreme quality saint artifacts were treasures that were the closest to god artifacts after all. Jian Chen sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. An albumstone heart flower, a void cloud flower, 6 overgod level cores, 8 god king level cores, the corpse of a golden striped silver snake, and a supreme quality saint artifact. He directly sighed about his trip to the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. He had benefited far too greatly. It's time for me to go back. With these 6 cores, I should finally be able to make a breakthrough with my chaotic body. It's already very difficult for me to find opponents among the level of overgods. If I make another breakthrough with the chaotic body, just what level will my battle prowess reach? Jian Chen felt his blood boil when he thought up to there. He was filled with anticipation. Chapter 1888. Kaiya awakens. Jian Chen returned to the Tian Yuan clan and immediately entered a secret room. With a wave of his hand, the crystal casket flew out of the bright moon divine hall. The fist-sized seven-colored heaven-devouring beast lied on the crystal casket. However, it was different from before. It was not cultivating. Instead, it stared at Kaya's face. Its intelligent eyes were rather doubtful. At the same time, it was filled with anticipation. In reality, it had been like that for a very long time already. Ever since Jian Chen fought the God King in the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair, it had been like that. Naturally, Jian Chen paid no mind to the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast's abnormality. He arrived before the crystal casket and slowly lifted the lid. He also activated the formations around the room. Only after doing all that did he take out the albumstone heart flower and the void cloud flower he obtained from within the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair. Instantly, a heavy fragrance permeated the surroundings. Just a single breath was enough to clear the mind and make people feel extremely comfortable. The fragrance had been firmly isolated within the tiny room and did not drift out. Otherwise, the fragrance would have spread across the entire provincial city in an extremely short amount of time. After all, this was a void cloud flower that had reached God tier. The eyes of the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast immediately lit up. It finally looked away from Kaya and stared at the two flowers in Jian Chen's hands. It became excited as it revolved around Jian Chen happily while buzzing its wings. It was as if it was already certain that Jian Chen would be able to wake up Kaya this time. Jian Chen hesitated slightly with the two heavenly resources before he finally decided to use the albumstone heart flower first. If the flower could awaken Kaya, he would be able to save a god-tier heavenly resource. Very soon, Jian Chen fed the flower into Kaya's mouth. Instantly, it turned into a ball of energy that gathered towards Kaya's soul. Jian Chen stared at Kaya without blinking at all. Deep concern flooded his face, along with some anticipation. Time passed silently. Very soon, it had already been 4 hours since Kaya ingested the albumstone heart flower. She still had not roused. Looks like I won't be able to save the void cloud flower, Jian Chen thought before feeding the god-tier heavenly resource into Kaya's mouth without any hesitation. He could not help but think to himself, you're clearly just a saint emperor, but you need so many heavenly resources for your soul. This is the first time I've ever seen something so weird. However, the void cloud flower is a heavenly resource at the highest grade I have ever obtained. If that doesn't work, I'm really out of options. Kaya, you have got to wake up. Jian Chen was eager. He and the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast currently paid complete attention to Kaya. However, at this moment, Jian Chen's expression changed. The jade talisman with a sliver of the power from his soul he had originally left in the Tian Yuan clan had shattered. Jian Chen's expression changed slightly. Now that the talisman had shattered, it meant that the Tian Yuan clan faced a huge threat. The threat was so great that it could directly affect the survival of the clan. Jian Chen immediately turned around and left. He appeared in the clan and directly charged for the discussion hall. All the elders had already gathered in the discussion hall. They sat on their seats sternly, causing the atmosphere in the entire hall to be rather heavy. What has happened? Jian Chen sat down on his throne and asked sternly. Patriarch, the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons was devastated 3 days ago. 2 of their 3 god kings were killed by the commander of the 9th army, with only the divine king escaping with wounds. However, just then, we received news that the 7th and 8th armies of the Empyrean demon cult have been mobilized together. They're currently meeting up with the 9th army, and they're directly heading towards our divine kingdom of Pingtian. Mo Ling stood up and said sternly. Jian Chen stood up from the patriarch's throne. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty, and he said sternly, this matter is probably far more complicated than it seems for 3 armies of the Empyrean demon cult to be mobilized together. It probably has nothing to do with the 3 overgods I killed a few days ago. 3 overgods aren't enough for the Empyrean demon cult to send 3 armies. Report. At this moment, a guard rushed in. He dropped to one knee and called out, Patriarch, special messengers from the royal capital are currently waiting outside. Let them in, said Jian Chen. Yes, Patriarch. Very soon, a few gods hurried in from the outside sternly. They were special messengers from the royal capital who especially carried the divine king's words, so their statuses were great. However, after they entered the Tian Yuan clan, all of them concealed their arrogance. The special messengers bowed towards Jian Chen politely. Afterwards, one of them said extremely politely, Esteemed patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, We have come under orders from His Majesty to ask the Patriarch to visit the royal capital and discuss important matters. I understand. When you return, please tell His Majesty that I will arrive soon, Jian Chen said to the special messengers. While Jian Chen was discussing important matters with the upper echelon of the Tian Yuan clan, Kai Ya's eyelashes began to tremble once again in the formation-ridden room. The trembling was unlike last time, which had only lasted for a single moment. Instead, it continued to tremble, trembling more and more intensely as if she was trying very hard to open her eyes. Naturally, the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast sensed this, as it had always been paying attention to Kai Ya. It cried out happily and constantly revolved around the crystal casket. It was in high spirits. Finally, Kai Ya opened her eyes slowly. What kind of eyes were they? If Jian Chen saw Kai Ya's eyes, he definitely would have doubted whether the person before him was Kai Ya or not. This was because the eyes were cold and merciless. They were terrifyingly frigid, as if she did not possess any emotion at all. Inside, there was even indifference towards life. It was like an invincible supreme ruler that controlled the universe, looking down at the lives in the world, viewing them all as ants. The seven-colored heaven-devouring beast stopped flying. It remained in the same position as before, except an invisible energy had frozen it in space and completely immobilized it. The origin energy and the ripples in space within the room were frozen as well. At that moment, the time in the secret room where Kai Ya stayed seemed to have come to a stop. Everything stopped changing, as if the scene had become frozen for eternity. At the same time, in outer space beyond the tremendous cloud plane, far beyond the range of what godhood experts could sense, extremely terrifying laws silently condensed. The laws were so powerful that they seemed to be able to replace the laws of the world and represent the will of the world. As a matter of fact, its appearance formed a huge disturbance to all 3,000 laws of the world. All the ancient existences in the superorganizations within the 5 regions of the cloud plane roused from their cultivation. They raised their heads towards outer space as shock filled their faces. What terrifying power of laws! It has basically reached the limit. Even the other laws have become suppressed and disturbed. Who is this? Since when did the cloud plane possess such a powerful figure? What terrifying power of laws! It has basically reached the limit. Even the other laws have become suppressed and disturbed. Who is this? Since when did the cloud plane possess such a powerful figure? These are heavenly laws. Anyone who can achieve something as great as this in terms of laws has basically fused with the laws of the world. They represent the world. Who is it that has reached that level of cultivation? This person is so powerful. With my abilities, I can only sense the power of laws in space. I can't find the person at all. All the ancient existences who had been around for who knows how long from the superorganizations in the 5 regions of the cloud plane cried out at that moment. All of their eyes were filled with angst as their hearts churned. Along with those emotions was a desire to stand at such a level. At the same time, countless powerful senses of the soul spread across the 5 regions of the cloud plane from various places. Every single one of them could engulf the entire cloud plane. The range that was covered was simply shocking. However, even though the ancient existences managed to cover the entire cloud plane in just a single instance, they failed to find the person. Aside from the frightening power of laws that charged up in outer space, they did not even manage to detect the presence of this person at all. The terrifying senses of the soul from these ancient existences were extremely well hidden. As a result, very few peak experts discovered the senses. Even infinite primes were unable to sense it at all. Kai Ya's body slowly hovered into the air within the secret room of the Tian Yuan clan. Her cold, emotionless eyes seemed to have shards of light drifting around and changing. In that short instance, she understood her past life. At that moment, she suddenly looked backwards. The inscriptions of the laws of the world seemed to flicker in her eyes. She seemed to have fused with the world, becoming a part of the laws of the world. She was able to learn the past and future with a single glance. She saw everything she had gone through while she was unconscious. She saw Jian Chen carry her crystal casket all the way from the Tian Yuan continent to the Saint's world. She saw Jian Chen leave her in the bright moon divine hall as he struggled all by himself in the Saint's world, fighting difficult, bloody battles. She also saw how Jian Chen had almost lost his life when he directly entered the very depths of the Een Mountains of Seven's despair, in order to wake her up with the void cloud flower. Kai Ya's gaze became cold and emotionless once again. Her face was cold, without any emotion at all. She gazed through the room and directly saw Jian Chen, who was hosting a meeting in the discussion hall. Since you've assisted me, I should gift you a huge fortune. Unfortunately, you're with the immortals world and you obtained the twin swords, Kaya murmured softly. At that moment, her voice had already changed completely. It was no longer the same as before. Instead, it was extremely strange. Her voice seemed to contain all the sounds in the world. It sounded male if someone believed it to be male. It sounded female if someone believed it to be female. As a matter of fact, if someone believed it to be the cries of birds and beasts, it would sound like the cries of birds and beasts. This was because all the sounds in the world were contained in the short sentence she had just spoken. Whatever. Since you have formed karmic ties with my reincarnation, I'll leave this reincarnation behind so that she can resolve all the ties you have formed. From now onwards, this reincarnation has nothing to do with me anymore, Kaya murmured to herself. As she said that, an extremely powerful ball of light hovered out of her forehead. It was a soul, and it formed a hazy figure. The light of the world surrounded the figure, so it was impossible to tell whether they were male or female. The figure in the light gradually extended a finger towards Kaya's forehead. After sending in some power of the soul that was basically insignificant to it, it removed some memories, only leaving behind the memories that the reincarnation should have possessed. Afterwards, she looked at the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast and said, Kaya, I never thought you'd survive the disaster. However, your damaged soul went through samsara, and you lost all your memories. You need to find them yourself. The seven-colored heaven-devouring beast was trapped there. It stared at the figure of light with both angst and confusion. The figure of light was just too powerful. It made it feel fear, but it became completely confused after hearing what the figure said towards the end. Vaguely, it felt an intense familiarity from the figure of light. It originated from its very soul, making it feel extremely safe. At the same time, it experienced a sense of belonging. This feeling was the same as what it felt from Kaya. It was exactly because of this that it had followed the much weaker Kaya of its own accord, spending all its time near her. In the end, the figure of light extended its hand and gently brushed past the center of the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast's eyes. It sealed up that short memory. The seven-colored heaven-devouring beast closed its eyes and immediately fainted. A gentle power laid it down on the floor. At that moment, Kaya's eyes had closed as well. She returned to the crystal casket. At that moment, the figure of light suddenly vanished completely, having left silently. The formations around the room outside were completely useless against it. Jian Chen finished his meeting in the discussion hall of the Tian Yuan clan. He announced that the entire clan would be on high vigilance, and the teleportation formation he had prepared would be ready to be used at any time. Once the divine kingdom of Ping Tian fell, all the people of the Tian Yuan clan would leave through the formation. Jian Chen immediately hurried back to the secret room after the meeting. The unconscious seven-colored heaven-devouring beast opened its eyes at that moment as well. It looked around at its surroundings in some confusion, and it seemed to remember something. It suddenly flew up from the ground and arrived before the crystal coffin. Right now, it had completely forgotten what had happened earlier, as if the memory had been erased from its head. Jian Chen walked into the room from the outside. He looked at Kaya, who remained within the crystal coffin, and he frowned. He murmured, "How come she's still not awake? Is a void cloud flower not enough to wake Kaya up? It's a god-tier heavenly resource after all." Jian Chen arrived before the crystal coffin and stared at Kaya, who laid there peacefully. He felt rather troubled inside, unsure as to what to do. What's a void cloud flower? However, at this moment, Kaya, who laid in the coffin, said something absent-mindedly. Afterwards, her eyes finally opened. The sudden voice made Jian Chen's face jump. When he saw Kaya's eyes open, jubilance flooded his face. "Kaya, you're finally awake. Do you remember how long you've been unconscious for?" Jian Chen asked happily. The void cloud flower really had not disappointed him. How did I fall unconscious?" Kaya was slightly confused, but gradually, she remembered the past. She remembered when an Origin Realm expert from the world of Forsaken Saints took her away during the war. "Jian Chen, did you save me? How long have I been unconscious for? And where is this?" Kaya looked around in confusion. Chapter 1890. Chanlong's chance at survival. You've already been unconscious for 100 years. In that time a lot of things have happened. We're no longer on the Tianyuan continent. Instead, we have arrived in a higher world. This place is called the Saints' World, Jianchen said. He explained everything that had happened after Kaiya fell unconscious, without missing any detail at all. This included the ceasefire between the Tianyuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints, as well as the catastrophe with the evil spirit that had happened afterwards and so on. He even told Kaiya about how he founded the Tianyuan clan in the Saints' World. Not only did Kaiya share the same homeland as him, coming from the same world as him, but she was also a good friend of his. As a result, he naturally hid nothing from Kaiya. Kaiya fell silent after learning that so many things had happened while she was unconscious. To her, the 100 years had been a dream. She had no idea when it passed, and now that she had woken up, the world around her had completely changed. Clearly, she needed time to digest and accept this fact. I never thought I'd actually be in another world after I woke up, Kaiya mumbled. She seemed rather dejected and sad. She could not help but think about her life back in the sea realm. She thought about her devastated clan and her dead father. She knew that it would probably be very difficult to return now that she had come to the Saints' World. Even if she could return, she had no idea how long she would have to wait. The seven-colored heaven-devouring beast flew to Kaiya's shoulder, as it sensed her sadness. It rubbed its small head against Kaiya's cheek gently, trying to comfort Kaiya in its own way. "Thank you for saving me, Jian Chen. I want some time by myself," Kaiya said to Jian Chen. Her voice was very gentle, and it possessed a faint sense of sadness. Jian Chen nodded. He did not disturb Kaiya any longer, leaving the secret room. At the same time, in the extremely distant Heavenly Moon Empire, a white-robed old man with white hair sat in the best room within an inn in the imperial capital. He held and studied a palm-sized azure disk. Jian Chen is becoming more and more powerful. There's probably very few people who can match his rate of progress. At this rate, he'll reach God King even sooner than me. The Heavenly Moon Empire isn't small, but it's just too close to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Looks like I have to travel further away or even leave the cloud plain, the old man murmured to himself as he sat on his bed. He seemed slightly worried. The old man was Master Chanlong. With Master Chanlong's abilities, even if Jian Chen was more powerful than him, there was no reason for him to fear Jian Chen so much. At most, he could just find an organization to join and use them to eliminate Jian Chen. It was nothing difficult to him. However, in the past few years, the trapped soul had constantly mentioned that it could see the future, and it could see the moment when Jian Chen killed him. If it were someone else and not the trapped soul, Master Chanlong would have never believed it. He would snicker at them instead. However, in all these years, he gradually discovered that the soul really did seem to be able to tell the future. He truly experienced everything it had once mentioned in the past, which gradually affected Master Chanlong's head, making him believe that he really was doomed. Even if he joined a powerful organization, he would still die to Jian Chen. As a result, Master Chanlong only hoped to be further away from Jian Chen right now. He wished to avoid this calamity. This was all because everything that the trapped soul had said affected him greatly. However, now that the Empyrean demon cult is turning on the divine kingdom of Pingtian, I really do hope that Jian Chen dies to the hands of them, said Master Chanlong. Old man Chanlong, quit dreaming. I can see countless karmic ties Jian Chen has with the Empyrean demon cult. It's so complicated that it has exceeded anyone's imaginations. The Empyrean demon cult is both a blessing and a curse to Jian Chen. Keep dreaming if you want Jian Chen to die to the Empyrean demon cult. I can already see your future. No matter how hard you try, you won't be able to avoid death, said the trapped soul. His voice directly drifted out from the space ring. It was still sealed within a set of formation banners. At this moment, the soul suddenly produced an interjection of surprise. It seemed to be experiencing a high, and it loudly said, "It has changed, it has changed. There's a change. Old man Chanlong, go to the Dong'an province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. I can see a chance at survival for you. It's your only hope, so don't miss it." Shi Yu currently stood within the sea of flowers in the gardens of the Tian Yuan clan. Her lonely and black figure seemed to possess a trace of sadness. She tightly held a jade pendant that was only 3 fingers wide. The jade pendant was made from some unknown material. It was extremely tough, and its design was extremely exquisite. It depicted a dragon and phoenix while the 2 words, Xiyu, were carved into its center. Xiyu always carried this jade pendant with her. To her, it was the most important object in her life. In the past few years, she took it out frequently and stood in a daze in a quiet place where no one could disturb her. She did not think of anything, remaining in a daze quietly. She had not been born into the Mo clan. When she was young, the patriarch of the Mo clan had found her outside. She was only a newly born infant back then. Even until now, Xiyu still had no idea who her true parents were and whether they were still alive in the world or not. There was only the jade pendant that was extremely likely to be left behind by her parents. Her name, Xiyu, came from the jade pendant as well. What are you thinking about? When Xiyu returned to her senses, a familiar voice rang out. Jian Chen had already arrived beside her at a certain time, and he was staring at the jade pendant in her hand curiously. Patriarch, Xiyu responded politely, but she seemed to be in low spirits. Can I see the jade pendant you're holding? Jian Chen asked. Xiyu hesitated lightly before giving the pendant to Jian Chen. Jian Chen took the pendant and examined it in his hand. His face gradually grew stern. Xiyu said in low spirits, my foster father said that when he found me outside, this jade pendant was the only thing on me. Perhaps it was left for me by my parents. Patriarch, why do you think they're cold-hearted enough to abandon their own daughter? This jade pendant is extraordinary. Although I don't know what has been used to craft the pendant, I can tell with a single glance that it's precious. Jian Chen returned the pendant to Xiyu. He stared at her with mixed feelings and said, your parents must have experienced inexplicable reasons for abandoning you. Maybe they were being hunted down by their enemies, so they had no choice. Jian Chen sighed gently after reaching there. He said, in the past I was the same as you. I too was an infant. I did not know who my parents were, and even until I died, I did not find my parents. Jian Chen could not help but think of his former life. In that life he was alone. He used the incomplete Azulite sword's law to practice a sword style that was enough for him to dominate the Jianghu. In just his 20s, he became the greatest swordsman in the Jianghu. Fortunately, the world did not abandon him. In his second life, which was his current life, he had a family, allowing him to experience the warmth of one. Xiyu stared at Jian Chen in a daze. She never thought that Jian Chen had actually experienced something just as pitiful as herself. She actually experienced sympathy in that moment. Jian Chen dismissed his feelings. He took out a single origin-gathering flowers he had obtained from the Divine King and said, this flower can gather the energy of the world. Xiyu, there'll probably be a great battle soon. Use this flower to cultivate and become an over-god as soon as possible. With your talent and the comprehension of the laws of the sword that I've engraved, becoming an over-god shouldn't be difficult at all. Xiyu was already a late god over-god now. Ever since Jian Chen engraved his comprehension of the laws of the sword, Xiyu's strength had soared. She could be described as making great progress every day. Chapter 1891. The Greatest Overgod Clan. After giving the origin-gathering flower to Xiyu, Jian Chen left for the forbidden grounds in the clan. Xiyu held the origin-gathering flower. Even though she understood its value, where even many god kings did not possess it, she was not paying any attention to it at all. Her eyes were in a slight daze as she stared at Jian Chen's back, all the way until Jian Chen vanished from her vision. At this moment, the effects of the origin-gathering flower were fully displayed. A mysterious suction seemed to affect the dense origin energy that had gathered within the Tian Yuan clan at that moment. It began to gather from all directions, arriving around the origin-gathering flower in Xiyu's hands. The origin energy around the flower had turned into a mist, as it was extremely tremendous in quantity. The people who had followed Jian Chen up from the lower world basically all cultivated in the forbidden grounds of the clan. Jian Chen had once spent much effort and resources to design the forbidden grounds. As a result, the origin energy there was the densest in the clan. There was a faint white mist in the entire area. The white mist was no regular mist. Rather, it was the materialization of origin energy once it had reached a certain concentration. In the forbidden grounds, Jian Chen sat by himself at a stone table. He made tea for himself and sipped it slowly. He seemed to be at leisure, but his face did not seem relaxed at all. His brows would furrow and unfurrow from time to time. He seemed to be in thought as a sliver of worry would appear on his face from time to time as well. Something seemed to weigh on his heart. Now that the Tian Yuan clan has gained a stable footing in the divine kingdom of Ping Tian, it really hasn't been easy. I hope we can make it through the large-scale invasion from the 3 armies of the Emperorian demon cult, Jian Chen said to himself softly. He felt very pressured when the 3 armies of the Emperorian demon cult advanced together towards the divine kingdom of Ping Tian. This was because he was not alone. There were quite a few powerful clans behind him with many people. It had not been easy for him to set up everything in the Dong'an province. It would be best if he did not have to let it all go. At this moment, there was a flash of gold light. The golden-robed newbies suddenly appeared before Jian Chen. He did not act politely at all, sitting before Jian Chen by himself. He picked up Jian Chen's tea and poured himself a cup. He said, "Brother Jian Chen, you're a busybody now. It really is hard to see you in the clan. In the past few decades, I've only seen you a few times at most." Jian Chen smiled helplessly. "We've all reached godhood. If we cultivate in seclusion, 100 years can pass in the blink of an eye and 1,000 years feels like 10 seconds. What are a few decades in comparison? From today onwards, not seeing me for thousands or even tens of thousand years will be commonplace." "That does seem reasonable," newbies nodded in agreement. He looked at Jian Chen and continued, "Though, I don't think you've called me the great newbies, over alone just to catch up on the past together. There must be something else." "That's right. I've called you over today to give you something," said Jian Chen. He directly tossed a space ring to newbies. Newbies did not mind it too much. To him, Jian Chen's gift was probably divine crystals or heavenly resources. However, when he saw what was in the space ring, he immediately paled in fright. He jumped up out of shock as surprise filled his face. "Oh my lord, www. What is this thing?" "Jian Chen. Where did you get this?" Newbie's eyes widened as he stared at Jian Chen in intense shock. Disbelief filled his face. It's actually so powerful. It's dead, yet it still has such a terrifying presence. I must have seen wrong. I must have seen wrong," Newbies murmured. His voice trembled slightly as he rubbed his eyes forcefully. He was tempted to stick his entire head into the space ring to get a clear look at it. In the end, after confirming it many times, he had to accept that what he saw was real. The item in the space ring was the corpse of the golden-striped silver snake from the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. It was a late god king. "If I remember correctly, this should be of great use to you," said Jian Chen. Newbies nodded furiously. He said excitedly, "It's not just of great use. It's basically a huge fortune to me. If I absorb his hidden essence, my bloodline will become even more powerful and even more terrifying. My strength will undergo an overwhelming transformation as well." "Jian Chen, where did you get this corpse from?" "It must have been an over-god before it died at the very least." Jian Chen shook his head. "It was a late god king before it died, except an expert that was even more terrifying killed it. I only managed to salvage the corpse." "What? A late god king?" Newbies was dumbfounded. God kings were figures of legends to him. Jian Chen's face suddenly became stern. He said, "The background of this golden-striped silver snake is extraordinary. In order to avoid a nightmare, please absorb the hidden essence as quickly as you can and destroy the corpse afterwards. You can't leave any trace of it, or we'll be in deep trouble." Newbies understood the severity of the matter when he saw how stern Jian Chen was. He said, "Don't worry, the great Newbies, will never disappoint you. Let's not waste time. I'll go into seclusion right now." Newbies left in an excited hurry. Jian Chen was also filled with eagerness as he watched Newbies leave. He had no idea just what level of strength Newbies would reach once he absorbed all the hidden essence within the late God King golden-striped silver snake. However, there was one thing he was certain about. Once Newbies emerged from seclusion, his strength would have undergone an overwhelming transformation. It would have increased drastically. At this moment, Jian Chen's face grew serious. He stared in the direction where Shangguan Mu'er was cultivating before immediately activating all the formations in the Forbidden Grounds, isolating it from the outside world. After Jian Chen completed all that, an extremely powerful presence erupted from where Shangguan Mu'er cultivated. The presence was so powerful that it should have shaken up the entire provincial city. However, due to the isolation through the formations, none of the presence managed to make it out. All the people cultivating in the Forbidden Grounds were alarmed. They emerged from their rooms and stared in Shangguan Mu'er's direction. Envy and joy filled their faces. Shangguan Mu'er had finally broken through at that moment. She had broken free from the chains of being a god, becoming an over-god. Fantastic! Mu'er has become an over-god as well. Coupled with Shan Jian, the Tian Yuan clan already has 3 over-gods, Jian Chen murmured to himself excitedly. In the neighboring divine kingdoms, even the most powerful clans possessed 2 over-gods at most. However, after just a few short decades of being founded, the Tian Yuan clan already possessed 3 over-gods. Coupled with Jian Chen's battle prowess, which was enough for him to stand supreme among over-gods, the Tian Yuan clan had unknowingly become the greatest over-god clan in the region. Chapter 1892. Kai Ya's chained Shangguan Mu'er gradually emerged from her room within the forbidden grounds of the Tian Yuan clan. Her tight, purple dress sculpted her perfect curvy body while her black hair was casually draped behind her. Her enchanting eyes shone brightly, giving off a sense of charm. Clearly, she was unable to conceal her presence, as she had just broken through. When she emerged from the room, the pressure of an over-god radiated from her. From time to time, a powerful pulse of energy would gush from her weak-looking body, causing her hair and clothes to flutter despite the absence of wind. Coupled with her otherworldly presence, she seemed like an immortal woman descending on a mortal's world. The people from the Tian Yuan continent immediately came up to congratulate her. Even Shen Jian had hurried over personally. The Tian Yuan clan had gained another over-god. This was an extremely important matter to the Tian Yuan clan, and it held great significance. After exchanging pleasantries, everyone dispersed, leaving only Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er behind. Jian Chen and Shangguan Mu'er held hands and walked out of the forbidden grounds. They strolled around leisurely in the beautiful fragrant gardens as they spoke to each other softly. They smiled faintly as they discussed matters that only husband and wife would talk about. They also talked about the threat of the Empyrean demon cult as well as the future direction of the clan. Jian Chen, don't bite off more than you can chew. Once we can't stop the Empyrean demon cult, retreat with the clansmen, Shangguan Mu'er tried to comfort Jian Chen. She spoke with some worry. She understood just how unwilling Jian Chen was to part with the Tian Yuan clan through their conversation. Founded in the Dong'an province, the province held great significance to the clan. It could be described as their ancestral lands. After all, they who had come up from a lower world appeared in the Dong'an province, so Jian Chen naturally possessed a unique attachment to the place. I still don't want to give up on this place until the final moment. Although I've already chosen the Heavenly Moon Empire as a path of retreat, the Tian Yuan clan won't be able to exist as peacefully there as it does in the Dong'an province, Jian Chen said with a heavy heart. Shangguan Mu'er's beautiful eyes shone. She stared into Jian Chen's eyes seriously and said gently, "You're worrying about the Earth Spirit sect in the Heavenly Moon Empire?" The Earth Spirit sect is one of the 2 great sects of the Heavenly Moon Empire. Even the imperial family has to show some respect to them. That's more than enough to show that it's extremely likely that the Earth Spirit sect has a primordial realm expert at the very least. Jian Chen frowned. If I were all alone, there would naturally be no need to fear, but I have an entire clan behind me. If you go to the Heavenly Moon Empire and the Earth Spirit sect purposefully makes things difficult for you, we'll only end up on different sides to them. With my current strength, we're nowhere near their opponent. Jian Chen, have you ever considered that by the time we become complete enemies with the Earth Spirit sect, you'll already possess strength on par with the primordial realm, and there would be no reason for you to fear them? It's impossible for me to make no progress during that time either, said Shangguan Mu'er. Afterwards, the zither of the demonic cry appeared in Shangguan Mu'er's hands. She stared at it with mixed feelings and said, "This zither is very extraordinary. Even with my strength at over-god, I still don't understand it fully. Whenever my strength increases to a new level, I will learn the cultivation method for the next level from the zither. So far, I have a cultivation method that can allow me to directly cultivate until God King. If I have enough time, I am confident that I can repel the Earth Spirit sect." Jian Chen was surprised by that. He examined the zither of the demonic cry closely and said heavily after a while, "This zither is indeed extraordinary. I can't tell its grade at all, but I'm certain it's not a saint artifact. It's extremely likely to be a god artifact." Jian Chen frowned away afterwards, "But if it's a god artifact, I don't sense the special characteristics of god artifacts from it. Can I have a look at the zither?" At this moment, Kaya walked over from afar in a water blue dress. She stared at the zither. Kaya, you've awoken? Shangguan Mu'er was stunned as she said in some surprise. All of them understood that Jian Chen had taken the unconscious Kaya into the saint's world within a crystal casket. Kaya arrived before Shangguan Mu'er and stared at the zither for quite a while. She gently furrowed her brows and said, "For some reason, this zither is slightly familiar to me." Kaya furrowed her brows in thought, but soon afterwards, she shook her head again. She said, "Perhaps it's because I saw you use the zither on the Tianyuan continent before. I don't know why. After being unconscious for 100 years, I always feel like I've forgotten something, as if there's something that I can't remember. It feels hazy to me. It might be because your soul was too heavily damaged, which left behind some side effects," Jian Chen said in thought. Kaya was clearly only a saint emperor, yet she needed so many priceless heavenly resources to awaken her from her slumber. He could only interpret it as her soul was extremely damaged. "Kaya, I've prepared some divine crystals in there as well as a few cultivation methods. You can directly use them to cultivate until over God. Feel free to pick one that's suitable for you." Jian Chen took out a space ring and passed it to Kaya. "Jian Chen, I already owe you too much. I can't take any more things from you," Kaya declined. Her feelings were rather mixed. She discovered that she suddenly experienced a sense of conflict deep within her heart towards the things that Jian Chen had given to her. "Take it. There's no need to be polite between friends." However, Jian Chen directly shoved the space ring into Kaya's hands. Kaya stared at the space ring in a daze, and her feelings became more and more mixed. Right now, she actually felt like returning the space ring to Jian Chen immediately. She did not know why she thought of that, as if the thought was her instinct. It confused her slightly. In the end, she accepted the space ring with extremely mixed feelings and clenched it tightly in her hand. "I'm going to take a stroll in the provincial city," Kaya said gently before turning around and making her way out. "Wait." Jian Chen stopped Kaya and gave a medallion to her. He said, "This is my medallion. Carry it with you. If you come across any problems in the provincial city, you can directly flash it, and it'll be resolved." Kaya accepted the medallion and glanced at it a few times seriously. Afterwards, she left silently. "Jian Chen, why do I feel like Kaya is somewhat different after she has woken up?" Shangguan Mu'er said after Kaya left. Jian Chen sighed gently. "To wake up in a completely foreign world away from where you came from originally, anyone would find it hard to accept." Chapter 1893. Visiting the royal palace again. Let's give Kaya some time to herself. She's different from us. We came to the saint's world completely willingly, while Kaya had been brought here by you unknowingly. She'd naturally find it very difficult to become accustomed to a completely foreign world. She might not even accept it. However, everything will change with time. I believe in just a few months, Kaya will become completely used to the saint's world," said Shangguan Mu'er. Even though she was not on any particularly good or bad terms with Kaya, they came from the same world after all. In the huge foreign saint's world, they would find every single person who had come from the Tianyuan continent to be close. I don't know whether bringing Kaya to the saint's world was right or wrong. But if I didn't do that, it would have been impossible to wake her up, Jian Chen murmured as he gazed in the direction that Kaya had disappeared off to. His feelings were rather mixed. However, he calmed down very soon. He said to Shangguan Mu'er, "The Empyrean demon cult is invading the divine kingdom of Pingtian, and the divine king has summoned me to the royal capital for matters to discuss. Mu'er, I have to go to the royal capital immediately. Do you need me to come with you? I can help you out now." Shangguan Mu'er looked at Jian Chen. In the past few years, when the Tianyuan clan developed, it had been single-handedly supported by Jian Chen on the outside. The other people basically did nothing. Now that she had become an over-god, she hoped to be able to share some of Jian Chen's burden. Jian Chen shook his head. "At a time like this, it's better if we don't reveal our true strength. It might be extremely effective in crucial times. I'll go to the royal capital by myself, while you stay and protect the clan, just in case." Speaking up to there, Jian Chen took out the supreme quality saint artifact fairy How You had gifted to him from his space ring. He said, "Mu'er, here's a defensive supreme quality saint artifact. It's extremely powerful. Now that war is basically looming over the horizon. Refine it immediately. The armor will be most useful when you wear you. You should keep it. You are the Tianyuan clan's pillar of support. Shangguan responded softly and pushed the armor away. Jian Chen smiled faintly and forcefully shoved the armor into Shangguan arms. He said, "You don't need to worry about me. My chaotic body is about to break through, so the armor won't be very useful to me. Mu'er, listen to me. Immediately refine the armor once I go, alright? I won't have to worry as much if you're protected by the armor. I'll be able to focus on dealing with my enemies." Afterwards, Jian Chen left the Dong'an province and directly made his way towards the royal capital of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Kaya made her way through the provincial city of the Dong'an province aimlessly, all by herself. She saw the people hurrying to and fro through the wide streets, saw the stores and stands that were filled with items on the two streets, and heard the hawkings and discussion that had mixed together. Confusion gradually filled her eyes. From time to time, she would raise her head and stare at the sky. Looking at the sky that was only a deep blue, her gaze seemed to penetrate it and arrive at the depths of the cosmos. The mixed hubbub in the streets and the people who moved through them made her feel a sense of great unfamiliarity. However, when she raised her head to look at the sky, she just happened to experience the exact opposite, even though it was supposed to be unfamiliar as well. She felt that it was familiar. This sense of familiarity originated from the very depths of her heart. It confused her. She was puzzled at why she felt this. Suddenly, she slowly raised her white, slender hand towards the sky among so many passers-by. She gently clenched her hands and pulled down. She had performed the action completely subconsciously because, from the bottom of her heart, the space seemed very weak. It was like she could rip through it easily, and she could unleash destructive might by just raising her hand. The outcome was very evident. Not only did she fail to rip through the sky, but she did not even create a ripple in space. Instead, her actions made her seem weird, attracting strange gazes from countless people on the street. Kaya did not seem to realize the things that were happening around her. She looked at her hand, and she became even more confused. At this moment, a thought grew stronger and stronger within her. She felt like she had forgotten something and lost something, but no matter how hard she thought and recalled, she could not think of anything. She even looked through her own life, beginning at the start and making it all the way to the present. She recalled all her memories and discovered that she had not forgotten anything. Aside from the 100 years she had spent unconscious, she could remember everything else she had gone through in her life. Kaya leapt up. With her strength as a saint emperor, she leapt onto the roof of one of the nearby stores. She hugged her knees and sat down, raising her head and staring blankly at the sky. The store belonged to the Tian Yuan clan. Many people naturally believed she was disrespecting the Tian Yuan clan since Kaya directly sat on its roof. From the store, an old man with a white beard immediately hovered out. However, he did not dare to fly higher than the shop. He stared at Kaya, who sat on the roof, hugging her knees, and bellowed furiously, "How dare you, back off!" However, before the old man could finish his words, an extremely dignified voice boomed in his head. A ruddy, sagely old man appeared in the sky on the other side. His long robes fluttered, and he possessed an otherworldly presence. He seemed like an otherworldly being. The old man was one of the elders of the Tian Yuan clan, Ando Fu. Jian Chen was worried that Kaya would find trouble all by herself in the city, so after giving her a medallion, he got Ando Fu to protect her secretly. This was because Kaya was just far too weak right now. She had not even reached the origin realm. She was a mere saint emperor. It was naturally extremely dangerous for her to move around in the city with strength like that. The old man who had emerged from the store only possessed strength at the peak of reciprocity. After seeing Ando Fu, he immediately became courteous and did not dare to utter another word. He returned to where he came from. Kaya did not realize what had happened at all. Her head remained raised as she stared at the sky blankly. It was as if there was nothing else besides the sky that made her experience a sliver of familiarity within the unfamiliar. Jian Chen arrived in the royal capital of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Under the lead of 2 female servants, he was directly taken to the central hall of the royal palace. Jian Chen discovered that there were over a dozen people seated in there. They all sat on the seats with their legs crossed and their eyes closed as they rested. When Jian Chen appeared, all of them opened their eyes and stared at him. Many of them nodded towards him with kind intentions. He did not find these people to be unfamiliar. He had seen them before. They were the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. All the overgods in the divine kingdom had gathered in the hall, aside from Ling Hogong of the sword-seeking province. Jian Chen, you sure are great. You made us wait 3 days for you. At this moment, the seated Yang Kai shot a glance at Jian Chen and said coldly. Chapter 1894. 3 armies. Yang Kai, the ancestor of the Yang family, had become a late overgod many years ago. Not only was he famed within the divine kingdom of Pingtian, but he was also well-renowned and influential in the neighboring divine kingdoms as well. At the same time, he was known as the most powerful expert below overgod in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Both his status and influence had surpassed the commander of the royal divine army, who possessed similar strength to him, Xian Dou. Even though this was due to the fact that Xian Dou always maintained a low profile and did not desire to excel over others, many people believed that Xian Dou was not as great as Yang Kai, which was why he behaved like that. As a result, Yang Kai was as dominant as the midday sun in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Only the divine king and the grand imperial protector were able to keep him at bay. However, his great fame had brought endless benefits to his Yang family as well. It allowed his Yang family to become known as the greatest clan in the divine kingdom of Pingtian long ago, allowing them to enjoy great honor. They were held in veneration and greatly respected by people. However, this all changed after the battle between Yang Kai and the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chen. In the battle, Yang Kai, who had been known as the most powerful below-god king in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, actually lost to Jian Chen, the patriarch of a clan that had only been founded a few dozen years ago. Not only did Yang Kai lose his title of being the greatest below-god king and his reputation, but even the Yang family was greatly affected. Their status was nowhere as great as the past. To Yang Kai, this was a disgrace, a permanent stain to his name. Although he was a late overgod, having cultivated for several dozen millennia, in no way was he a generous man. The humiliation he experienced after the battle had gradually transformed into a sense of hatred. He was no longer able to treat Jian Chen like someone he could get along with now. Jian Chen's expression remained the same. He glanced past Yang Kai indifferently before smiling apologetically. He clasped his fist at the overgods in the hall and said, "There was quite a lot of distance to travel, so I spent some time on the road. I've made you all wait. I deeply apologize." Ha ha ha, the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan is far too polite. Isn't it just 3 days? That's just a blink of an eye to us, brother Jian Chen. You're cursing me if you put it like that. I only arrived a little earlier than you. If you say it like that, wouldn't it be me who made everyone wait? The overgods on the seats all stood up after they heard Jian Chen's words. They all clasped their fists at Jian Chen with a smile as they spoke extremely politely. Clearly, Jian Chen's prestige was far greater than Yang Kai's in the divine kingdom of Pingtian now. Aside from Yang Kai, all the overgods showed him respect. On the other hand, Yang Kai's face instantly sank deeply when he saw so many people support Jian Chen. Jian Chen ignored Yang Kai. After exchanging pleasantries with everyone, he directly made his way to his seat. The seats were placed in 2 rows, one on the left and one on the right, with a walkway through the center. Every single seat had a name engraved on it. Jian Chen just happened to be seated at the very front on the right side. The seat happened to be the closest to the king's throne. Xian Dou sat in the second seat, right next to Jian Chen. As for Yang Kai, he sat on the first seat on the left row. Jian Chen just happened to sit in front of Yang Kai. Yang Kai glanced at Jian Chen coldly before closing his eyes straightforwardly. Jian Chen did not worry about Yang Kai. Yang Kai was not his opponent before, and now that he had become relatively stronger than before, Yang Kai was even less of an opponent now. Jian Chen crossed his legs on the large luxurious seat. He closed his eyes to rest, quietly waiting for the divine king's arrival. Immediately, the hubbub Jian Chen's arrival caused quietened again. It was completely silent now. His Majesty has arrived. At this moment, a loud and vigorous voice broke the silence in the hall. The eyes of all the overgods present snapped open at the same time, and they stood up from their seats. The divine king walked in with a dragon's crown on his head and the king's dragon robes on his body. He did not walk quickly, but whenever he took a step, the heartbeats of all the overgods seemed to resonate with it. Each step seemed to land on the hearts of the overgods, forming a tremendous, invisible pressure on them. All the overgods in the hall held their breaths at that moment. A sliver of respect appeared on their faces, and they could not help but lower their heads slightly. Jian Chen's eyes shone brightly, and he also lowered his head slightly. He mumbled to himself inside, "The Divine King is so powerful. Probably even the 9 late god kings I came across in the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair isn't as great as him." Jian Chen understood that even among late god kings, there could be huge differences. Any person who could make it onto the god king's throne, regardless of whether they could make the rankings or not, would possess strength on par to late god kings. Making it into the rankings only required a cultivation level of late god king as well, but the people who held the top 10 rankings possessed strength equivalent to early infinite primes. They would be able to kill infinite primes directly as late god kings, which was extraordinary. I wonder if the Divine King has made it onto the God King's throne, Jian Chen thought. He did not know the exact strength of the Divine King, but he felt that the Divine King was unfathomable. Greetings to His Majesty. The overgods below all bowed after the Divine King had sat down on his throne. There's no need to be so polite. Please be seated. The Divine King smiled faintly. He appeared amicable yet no less dignified. I think you all understand why I've summoned you all here today. Allow me to explain the exact strength of the 3 armies from the Empyrean demon cult, the Divine King said plainly. Even when the Divine King mentioned the 3 armies that were enough to cause the expressions of other Divine Kings to change, he remained composed and the same as before. Looking at how unworried the Divine King is, he seems very confident that we can repel the attacks from the Empyrean demon cult. Are those ancient empires going to take part? Jian Chen guessed inside, as he always paid attention to the Divine King's expression. The Empyrean demon cult has a total of 9 armies. Apart from the first army, the 8 other armies basically possess the same power. The commander of the 9th army is Yan Wuming. He's a late god king and is known as the Blood God Hand because he knows an extremely powerful god-tier battle skill. Once he uses it, the sky and earth are dyed scarlet red. He can condense a huge red hand that possesses shocking power. Unless it is those who have made it onto the God King's throne, there are very few God Kings who can stop Yan Wuming. The commander of the 8th army is Luo Duo. He's also a late God King and is known as the Bloodthirsty Butcher. He's cold and merciless and also extremely bloodthirsty. He once charged into a divine kingdom all by himself and slaughtered billions of people. There was not a single person left alive wherever he passed by. The boundless baleful presence caused all the vegetation in the divine kingdom to wilt. The commander of the 7th army is Yaxi Lian. She's also a late god king and is female. However, she's a transformed 9-tailed fox. Although she's the weakest out of the 9 army commanders, she's the most sly and the hardest to deal with. She possesses natural sexual charm and is skilled at charming her opponents. Those who have weak willpower fall for her charms extremely easily and lose all rationality. Reaching this point, the Divine King became stern. He stared at the overgods below him before his eyes stopped on Jian Chen. He warned seriously, if you encounter the commander of the 7th army, Yaxi Lian, keep in mind that it's best if you don't see her or listen to her voice. With your strength, it's very easy for you to be led astray by her words and actions. This is because even a few god kings can fall for her tricks if they aren't mentally strong. Chapter 1895. The Cult's Hall of Protectors, Jian Chen. Heed my advice in particular. Yaxi Lian loves talented geniuses. If Yaxi Lian learns of you, she'll definitely pay special attention to you. As a result, you have to be careful, the Divine King warned Jian Chen sternly. Thank you for your reminder, Your Majesty. I will be careful, Jian Chen clasped his fist sternly. He did not believe the Divine King was telling lies. It would definitely be a huge problem if he caught the eye of the commander of the 7th army. This was because the Divine Kingdom of Ping Tian only possessed 2 god kings, while the commanders of the 3 armies from the Empyrean demon cult were all late god kings. Aside from the Divine King who Jian Chen could not see through at all, Jian Chen was able to roughly sense the Grand Imperial Protector. Even if the Grand Imperial Protector was a god king, he was not the opponent of any one of the 3 commanders. The Divine King continued, each army of the Empyrean demon cult possesses a set number of 100,000 people. However, any single one of their armies possess the power to easily crush our huge army that reaches into the millions. Just 100,000 people were able to easily wipe out an army that reached into the millions. This was definitely an astounding matter. Many overgods became extremely stern when they heard that. Even though they understood the strength of the 9 armies, they were unable to remain calm whenever someone mentioned it. Your Majesty, we won't be able to stop the 3 armies from the demonic cult at all when they come to invade, an overgod said painfully. A few of them were already ready to retreat. They would secretly move their clans away after the meeting and abandon all their businesses, leaving the divine kingdom of Pingtian for good. The divine king said calmly, "It will indeed be a tough fight for our divine kingdom of Pingtian when the 3 armies invade, but that's all it will be. It won't be a devastating battle. The Empyrean demon cult won't be able to wipe out our divine kingdom of Pingtian because those ancient empires have already sent reinforcements. They're currently on their way." Even the ruler of the southern region, the Blood Sun Empire, is paying attention to the situation here at all times. The Empyrean demon cult has already crossed their bottom line by destroying the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons. They won't let the Empyrean demon cult continue their advance so fearlessly anymore. What? The empires have already sent reinforcements? The Blood Sun Empire is also paying attention to the matters here? Your Majesty, is that true? Will the Blood Sun Empire send reinforcements to assist us? I never thought that the Blood Sun Empire would care about this matter so much. If the Blood Sun Empire steps in, the threat of the Empyrean demon cult will be eliminated instantly. If the Blood Sun Empire sends reinforcements, we can attack the headquarters of the demonic cult and get rid of them for good. Many overgods were overjoyed. What the Divine King had just said was a huge blessing without a single doubt. It allowed them to see a ray of hope in the darkness. The Blood Sun Empire had spurred them in particular. They were the rulers of the southern region of the Cloud Plain. They were on a whole different level compared to the ancient empires in terms of strength. Before the Blood Sun Empire, even ancient empires such as the Heavenly Moon Empire had to bow their heads in submission. The Heavenly Moon Empire was only an ancient empire. There were a total of 6 of them in the southern region, while the Blood Sun Empire was known as an eternal empire. It was the only eternal empire in the southern region. Only Jian Chen's face remained unchanged. He remained stern with his eyebrows locked together. Even though he knew that there would be people from the empires who would come to provide reinforcement, they were only coming to protect the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Counterattacking or even ridding the Empyrean demon cult for good was basically impossible, let alone the eternal Blood Sun Empire in the south. But even the Tian Empire that had been known as an everlasting empire in the central region did not have that courage. This was because he had learnt some absolute secrets from the God King by Tong Tian's side, Qin Do. Probably even many God Kings had not heard of these secrets before. The Empyrean demon cult itself was nothing scary. On the Cloud Plain, there were many organizations that could wipe them out. However, the great elder behind the demonic cult made the organizations who stood at the very top feel fear. At this moment, Jian Chen stood up and clasped his hands. "Your Majesty, are there no other God Kings apart from the commanders of the 3 armies attacking our divine kingdom?" Jian Chen was indeed very doubtful. All the commanders of the 3 armies were late God Kings, so logically speaking, there should have been a few early God Kings and mid-God Kings as deputies. In many armies, there would be generals of the left and right wings as well as deputy commanders. How could the Empyrean demon cult's 9 powerful armies not even have a deputy commander? There is indeed only one God King in each army of the Empyrean demon cult, and they're all late God Kings. The Divine King sank into his thoughts and said slowly, "According to my understanding, the Empyrean demon cult has a hall of protectors aside from the 9 armies. Once an overgod in the armies becomes a God King, they immediately leave the army and become a protector. At the same time, each protector is a successor to the 9 commanders. Once a commander falls in battle, the new commander will be chosen from the protectors. Your Majesty, may I ask just how many people there are in the Hall of Protectors?" Bing Lu from the Yubing clan of the Frigid Snow Province asked. He no longer seemed as old as before. There was a faint, healthy glow on his face now. During these years, Bing Lu's strength had clearly increased by quite a lot. He was now a mid-overgod. This time, the Divine King fell into a period of lengthy silence. He only sighed after quite a while and said, "Probably even the experts from the empires won't be able to answer this question. However, you don't need to worry about that. It's enough as long as you understand that the Empyrean demon cult won't be able to get past our divine kingdom of Pingtian. All I require is your full strength when the war begins, so we don't get dirty looks from the people of the empires. I've said everything that I need to say. You all go prepare for battle. The Divine King waved his hand and ended the meeting. After dispersing, everyone thought back to the Empyrean demon cult's Hall of Protectors mentioned in the meeting, including Jian Chen. Their expressions constantly changed. From how the Divine King had responded, he clearly had no idea about the Hall of Protectors. Otherwise, he would never have remained silent for so long. Looks like there should be quite a few protectors in the Hall of Protectors, concluded many overgods. They all became extremely stern. They've created a hall for protectors. Just how many god kings does the Empyrean demon cult possess? Jian Chen wondered as he felt astounded. From the start till the end, no one mentioned the 3 overgods that Jian Chen had slain. Even Yang Kai, who resented Jian Chen, did not speak a word of it. This was because they all understood that the invasion of the 3 armies actually had nothing to do with the 3 overgods. 3 overgods were not worth a war for the Empyrean demon cult, and it was not why they had directly mobilized 3 armies. They had even received news that in this attack, the Empyrean demon cult had not just mobilized the 7th, 8th and 9th armies. They had mobilized their 6 other armies as well. The 9 armies split into 3, attacking the southern region, the northern region, and the western region. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.